a lot of the work. So, in other words, I'm a completely materialist person when it comes to this sort of thing. To me, we're not that different from the machines. We're made of atoms that came from stars, organized much more brilliantly and in a sophisticated way than any computer for now. So of course we pat ourselves on the back that we're much, no computer could ever do what we do. But we've been saying this for a long time.
Network science, is there like with clustering? I mean, is it beyond just like a counting of states? Is there some way to classify a network?
It's a good question. And I haven't seen people talking about entropy. There are ideas of curvature. I mean, like you can have discrete versions of curvature, just like we have continuous curvature. But does entropy generalize to network? I mean, we have entropy in dynamical systems we certainly talk about. Mm-hmm. Aside from thermodynamics and classical physics, I mean, even in nonlinear dynamical systems, there are people that calculate things about information and entropy and all of that. So those ideas do work outside of statistical physics. But I haven't seen anyone use them in networks that I can remember, but it seems so natural. It's such a powerful idea.
Just Luke Ford and the dangers of e-personality. If he's an introvert, incel or whatever, and when he comes out on the internet, he has this, like the dark side of his subconscious becomes conscious. I mean, to me, it's obvious. It's what happens. It's what's happening to you on the same way. But your unconscious, your subconscious is different than Gandalf's subconscious.
Logic and science dictate that not only consciousness doesn't exist, consciousness is in fact scientifically impossible. And yes, it is going to involve math and calculus and science and computer programming. I'm sorry. And that have different implications of the process with the connection between the levels of a person's soul and how it reincarnates.
But I'm not going to spur on the issue because I'm not a woman. It's not my issue.
About how one day you're going to fulfill the Canadian dream or the American dream. So you watch Seinfeld and say, I could do it. I'm going to go out tomorrow, go to work, and have a great day, and I'm going to be successful. And one day I'm going to have my own apartment. I'm going to have my own parties with my own friends over, and I'm going to have my own possessions. I'm going to see things that I want and just buy them.
Yeah, but that's just so to say, a worthless opinion of yours.
Of their emotions, and a Madhyan will see their emotions through the lens of Shastra.
Oh my goodness! Say that again. That was good.
Yeah. Okay. A beginner's practitioner will see Shastra, the scripture, the revealed message, through the filter of their emotions.
Right.
So, and a Madhyam, a progressive Vaishnava, will see their emotions, whatever is going on there, filter that through the lens of Shastra.
Wow, I really like that. That's a great point.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, but the idea is.
Sure.
So the point is that if we do not have the type of discipline, we may interpret revelation, interpret whatever Guru said according to our own emotional waves, if you will.
Hello and welcome back to Week in Review with the one and only Doooovid. I've got him on the screen right now. He's just so awesome. He's overloading my OBS. It keeps crashing. We've got a lot of exciting stuff to talk about tonight, including a special guest, Justin Joseph, YouTube channel, God's Final Messenger, I think. Hope I got that right. And I realized I told him we'd be having him on at 7:30, and there's daylight savings time, so it's actually 8:25. My apologies. Total oversight there. Should have been more careful. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Doooovid for the introductions.
Okay, great. I hope you message him or something, just in case he tried to show up at half an hour ago and thought it was our problems. I'm looking forward to.
I think he emailed me back, so I think he realized that I made a mistake, but is too polite to say anything. So I'll just quickly message him.
Okay, yeah. So go ahead and do that. And not that exciting of a week in terms of streaming. So I had Charles Moskowitz. I was on regular this week, and we talked about the Squad and where there's anti-Semitic. And I popped on Sulha, the reconciliation, this Israeli page that was talking about kind of like a leftist Israeli group, all this IDF veteran. He debated Joseph Cohn today, and I popped on his stream for a few minutes and spoke, and that was a little bit interesting. There's quite a bit of Jewish news going to Israel and even locally, but we may not talk about that much. So nothing too particular. I don't think Jennifer had any streams. So the most interesting thing will be whether we get hopefully we'll have Justin Joseph here, and we'll talk about his books and his stream with T-Jump and some debating and some other stuff just on chunking and consciousness and other things we'll see in the chat if Vince wants to pop on or something. So not too much to review. I went to actually an IRL event here in Metro Detroit, a Sabbath event with some Jewish girls in Detroit, Metro Detroit, political activist. So that was it was weird, because like I'm used to not being around people very much. So it was kind of nice, but I was like, we're wearing masks and social distancing and just like, having not seen people for a period of time. And then I went to the grocery store today for like the first time, and like hardly anyone was wearing masks. And I still wear the mask, but the requirements are no longer in place. Case count is down. So it's interesting. So in case Justin Joseph comes right away, maybe I'll just go straight into.
He strikes me as like super organized. So he said he'd come on at 7:25, which I assume he realized I'm at 8:25. So I assume he's going to be right on time for the wrong time that I spaced out on. But yeah, I think he will give us enough time for an intro there. So go ahead.
Okay, yeah, and he could be. I don't know where he's located. So I mean, if he's not in the same time zone as me, 7:25 would be. But here in Metro Detroit, it's 8 o'clock is supposed to be doing it. 7 o'clock. And actually, see, Metro Detroit, they created a Hindu Community Relations Council and kickoff events tomorrow. So I might actually, Zoom, go to that. I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to get back into going Sundays to the Hare Krishna Temple. But if I do, we'd been streaming at 7, and so 8 might be more likely, or even later, like 9, when we had done before. So it turned out that this Justin Joseph had on his channel a few weeks ago had debated a Haredi Orthodox Jew in Israel, and actually looked familiar. He'd been from Borough Park, Ephraim. I asked him, like, he looked vaguely familiar to me. And then Justin gave his kind of position of, we'll have to talk to him if it's like pantheism, but he doesn't believe in revealed scripture. And he was, pointing out that, he strongly believes in God, but he doesn't believe in, these divinely ordained commandments or the prophecy of Moses. So I thought I would open up my chant with a chant that is like a mantra that is, kind of I don't call it refutation, but like, the Judaic outlook on, why pantheism is not true. It has to be dualism. So this is a daily mantra said after the silent prayer, one of the mantras after the regular prayers towards the end. In Hebrew, Baruch Hu Eloheinu Shebaranu Likvoi Doi. Blessed is he, our God, who created us for his glory. V'hivdilanu min hatoim, separated us from those who stray. V'nasal nanu Toras emes, gave us the Torah of truth. V'chaya oilam natan bisochenu, and implanted eternal life within us. Implying that we do have a soul that's eternal, that survives past the destruction of the material realm, and that there was, in fact, scripture that was given that was true. The Jennifer quoted from the Late Show of Namarasa right before that, referring to Shastra, which is Sanskrit basically for scripture, that beginners filter Shastra scripture through our emotions, and as we become more advanced, we filter our emotions through scripture. And I mentioned that a few weeks ago when we showed these models of consciousness, and even Jennifer in her debate with T-Jump, where she was mentioning the role of emotion in consciousness, that factually people filter information through emotion, and through a meditative effort you could filter emotion through scripture, through some sort of higher power. And Right Reaction wants to come on also. That's great. I was on his show feed. I completely forgot about that. So I was on Right Reaction show for like hours and hours and hours. And I also had a stream with my local Hare Krishna buddy, Antariksha Das. Interesting also.
So I guess it was an exciting week for streaming after all. It was just so exciting you forgot it all.
Yeah, I mean, and me and Jennifer want to move into memory techniques also. So we were talking about that offline, and maybe we'll start reviewing mental techniques and memory techniques, so people will get a better look at how to improve our mind and to interpret chunking theory or consciousness through how these mental techniques work. So let me chant this mantra, and if you want to give the link to Ralph right away too, I'm not sure. It's up to you. So let me just get the mantra to start it off on a good note. As I said, blessed is the Creator who created us for the Creator's honor, separated us from those who stray, and gave us the true Scripture, Torah, and eternal life. Baruch Hu Elokeinu Shebaranu Likvoidai, Baruch Hu Elokeinu Shebaranu Likvoidai, V'hivdelanu minatoyim v'nasalanu Torahs emes, V'hivdelanu minatoyim v'nasalanu Torahs emes, V'chaye yoilam, V'chaye yoilam, V'chaye yoilam, V'chaye yoilam, V'chaye yoilam, Natan b'socheinu, Natan b'socheinu. We'll do it twice this time. Baruch Hu Elokeinu Shebaranu Likvoidai, Baruch Hu Elokeinu Shebaranu Likvoidai, V'hivdelanu minatoyim v'nasalanu Torahs emes, V'hivdelanu minatoyim v'nasalanu Torahs emes, V'chaye yoilam, V'chaye yoilam, V'chaye yoilam, V'chaye yoilam, V'chaye yoilam, Nosan b'socheinu, Nosan b'socheinu. So if that hopefully will open up to a good show and set kind of the feel for hopefully a conversation we'll have with Justin James, where this concept of separating from those who go astray, from the people that don't recognize that God gave us truthful scripture and implanted eternal life within us. So and also Theology Unleashed had another show on the problem of evil. We talk about that, and if Ralph is here, it'd be interesting to hear Ralph like straight up what he's doing with his politics, and he's hosting these conversations, I guess, related to these upcoming elections in England and Domingo. So I had these hours, and Domingo trolled me hard, in front of like 100 people, 1,000 people viewed. Domingo just coming straight at me, based on Judaism. And ironically, my buddy Jake Turks, the White House press correspondent for Ami magazine, had a sit-down interview with President Trump in Mar-a-Lago. From what I understand, is the first sit-down interview that President Trump gave anybody with Jake Turks, a chess player. We went to the same yeshiva, Baba Yeshiva, And he says when you interview Trump, really Trump interviews you because he controls it. So it's not just like, Mr. Trump ask him this or that. Like he kind of controls, like he has to report the questions. And one of the things Domingo trolled me on was Shulam Rabashkin, who, we had, Jennifer even used for the meme for the picture for Week in Review that yes, my rabbi is the landlord, but he was the one who was pardoned for President Trump for using all the illegal Mexican labor for his meat factory. He said the first question that President Trump asked him was, "How's Rabashkin doing?" So it was one of the things that we talked about with Ralph. So I guess with that, let's hope we have a good week in review, and hand it over to Jennifer for her week in review.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see everyone in the chat and tuning in. I just want to give a quick overview because I did do quite a few hours on a post-modern day debate stream on Amy Newman's channel, and that was interesting. There was some alcohol involved, so it wasn't as productive as maybe it could have been, but I think I still managed to get a couple points out. There was a lot of criticism, though, predictably. I just wanted to give people who are interested in this quantum consciousness stuff like a ultra fast crash course. Stuart Hameroff, in a lot of ways, kind of pioneer this thing. Him and Dr. Penrose really pushed this model forward, which is basically positing that there's a mitochondrial, forget exactly what it is, but some sort of matrix inside your body, some subset of your body generates quantum field, and it's fluctuations in this field that are responsible for consciousness. So it's technically
microtubules that are uniquely found in neural cells. So these microtubules are found, I believe, in all neuron cells. So even plants, not all like viruses, single-celled organism, but even lower, so to say, lower life forms like plants and some smaller organisms also have neuron cells, and neuron cells, I believe, all have microtubules.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for, was microtubules there. So you could argue it's a dualism or non-dualism, as in the mind is part of the body, or subset dualism, where you're saying the mind's a subset of the body, but it's a proper subset, and we can isolate the mechanism for it. So it's kind of like dualism. If you think about the Venn diagram, a subset is a circle inside a larger circle. So two ways to look at that. I essentially disagree with that. I haven't looked into it too much, but I think that Hameroff's views would have been in line with the guy, Spinoza, right? So we've got another guy, John Joe McFadden, who has been working on this for quite a while, who basically stipulates the same thing that I do. He doesn't have a subjective model. Like, I've actually got a theory for subjectivity and a bunch of blog articles covering general subjectivity. It's a bit heady, but it does apply to subjectivity and uses subjective axioms, whereas looking at it the way Dr. McFadden is, he's just trying to establish that what the consciousness is physically. So he's posited essentially the same thing as me, that it's electromagnetic field. And I know some people don't like the word field. Yeah, there are issues with that. That's why I suggest waveform. But people haven't really accepted that into quantum physics, even though that is technically what it is. So I thought it was pretty interesting as well to see this article come out on Yahoo. Some scientists believe the universe is conscious, and just reading it through was kind of hilarious because they're like talking about, oh, how confusing it is to understand consciousness and everything else. So if you look up John Joe McFadden, his work is covered in a bunch of relatively recent papers. So here we are again in popular mechanics, just reiterating what I said before. And we'll be having, okay, let's have a look here. This is why scientists have trouble with consciousness. So modern science fits a paradigm of what I would call materialist reductionism. So linear time, this paradigm that everything can be modeled with point particles. So that's basically the axioms of science, is that they're restraining themselves to just looking at those things. Consciousness doesn't really can't really be isolated. You also can't draw a boundary between consciousness and non-consciousness. Like, to find that starting stop point is impossible. People have definitely tried. So this sort of leads to a situation where consciousness, because it's subjective, people think is outside of the domain of science, because science is supposed to be non-subjective. That's a bit of an issue, but that is what people think. So we don't really, the result of this is we don't really have a very good definition of consciousness. We sort of just take it for granted. It's like temperature. Like, sure, thermodynamics has a definition of temperature, average kinetic energy of constituent molecules, but you don't need to know that to be able to work a thermometer. So we have to sort of learn to see the difference between agreeing on the fact that 0 is freezing and 32 is, or sorry, not 32, 100 is boiling. Agreeing on that is one thing, but then agreeing as to why that is a different thing. And we've sort of had a situation of conflating them in our modern understanding of consciousness. And so that's why we have our show, or part of the reason. Another interesting thing that I saw, which I'll just bring up right here, is a slightly different formalism, but I think the same basic idea of the measurement limit, which is that there's 3 plus 1 independent measurements per order of magnitude. And it sort of seems like Pythagoras might have been onto the same thing, but the way he phrased it was nature's comprised of right angles. Now, obviously that's like not self-evident, but if we look at measurement limit, is saying is that there are 3 perpendicular spatial dimensions and another dimension of time, which is mutually perpendicular to these 3. So there's this perpendicular element that really is at the heart of nature. So maybe he was just is onto the same idea, but he was phrasing it sort of differently. So I thought that was really interesting. And my computer's frozen right now, but I was just gonna quickly scroll through, and it looks like we've just been joined by Justin Joseph. I was just about to display your Amazon page for anyone interested in learning about this author and live streamer who has been gracious enough to come on and answer our questions. Thank you for joining the stream. What should we call you? Just Justin?
Just Justin is fine, yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Jen, and this is Doovid, my streaming partner. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Hello, Doovid. How's it going?
Excellent. I was just mentioning, Jennifer pointed out your T-jump debate, and I thought that Jennifer had beaten. I thought that T-jump beat Jennifer, although her arguments were superior largely because he's a debate master and like master rhetorician and very experienced at doing it. And she's more new to public debate, but that her arguments were better. And then she, showed me your debate, and I watched that, and he basically used some of the same tactics, and which was kind of like this point by point. And she made these charts. Hopefully, we'll go over. And then she said you accepted the invite to come on the show, so very interested to hear your worldview. And I saw that you had talked to this guy Ephraim, and he looked vaguely familiar because I lived in Borough Park, and it was a pretty interesting conversation. And so, maybe we'll talk about that more, just so I could get this off of my desk, because I think Jennifer is classifying you as a pantheist, and we'll have to talk about that. But in my mind, this is one of the greatest books ever written. Pantheism and the Value of Life, with special reference to Indian philosophy, by Father William Spence Urquhart, 1877. He died in 1964. The book was written in 1919. It was his PhD thesis, and he went on to become the Chancellor of Scottish Church College in India. And his most famous students is Swami Bhaktipada Prabhupada of the Hare Krishna movement, who was his student when he was young. And Prabhupada mentions him quite often when he travels, that this man was his teacher and taught him rhetoric. He was also the teacher of Sudra Chandra Bose, more famous in India as the father of the Indian Revolutionary Army that teamed up with Nazi Germany to fight off the British. And he had actually been at President's College, and his students, there was this professor who was bad-mouthing Hinduism, and God forbid Sudra Chandra Bose and students had arranged to have this professor like beaten up and thrown down a flight of stairs for bashing Hinduism. and was expelled from President's College, and then went to Scottish Church College and studied under this Father Eucharart. But Father Eucharart, on his own, thought that Ramanujacharya was superior to Shankaracharya in personalism, and he was one of the few, Christians. He was a Scottish Protestant of Scottish Church College, and one of the few, Christians in India that was wide respected among Hindus. And he wrote this book called Pantheism and the Value of Life, and he recognized that pantheism largely comes from the Vedic tradition and goes through an analysis. And he talks about pessimism because at the end of the day he was a Christian, and he gives a critique of pantheism as what he would call largely a pessimistic outlook on life, as opposed, like the mantra I opened up with, that you're believing that there's an external dualistic God that exists outside the material realm that could grant us eternal life, or that could interact with us independent of the rules of the material realm, is a more optimistic view of life. And it's actually free online to read at University of Michigan in the link that I shared. And with that, I'm not sure exactly if Jennifer did quite a bit of work flowing your debate technique, because Jennifer was going to appear in Modern Day Debate, and I told her she needs to learn flowing technique. And I don't know if you've heard of flowing, but like flowing in America is like basic skill that they teach people in debate. I learned flowing in 9th grade, and I told her the reason T-Jump is going to beat her is because he's debated hundreds of times and he knows these rhetorical skills. And so Jennifer learned flowing, then she adapted it on her own, and I guess her background in math and physics took a more numerical analysis, and a lot of what she found, the way T-Jump did her in, was basically the same way he tried to do JJ, was by basically negating everything that you said, as opposed to building up his own system and formally developing what are his ideas, how are his ideas consistent. He's more like, I'm an atheist, and anybody who's not an atheist, he's just going to destroy their worldview. So I'll hand it over to Jennifer and see. I'm not sure exactly.
Well, I was just
or JJ.
take it wherever he wanted to go with it, like, because the only question I really have is like, you could maybe tell us a mini story about yourself, whatever you're comfortable divulging, but how'd you come to these beliefs? Because I just thought you defended them so well, and the argument structure had such good logic. So I was really curious about where it all started, I guess.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't understand like philosophy, so I have no idea a lot of these philosophical terms. Nor am I like a professional debater. I don't really debate professionally. I didn't even know about Tom Jump until just recently. A friend of mine was on a show and said that I should go on because of the claims I'm making. So how do I come to this knowledge? Basically, I was an atheist for most of my life, and I had just had a revelation from God, pretty much. And I just started understanding completely how the universe works, totally how it works, totally what God is, totally how God interacts with us, totally what we are in the universe. I just started understanding it. I don't know why. I was playing Grand Theft Auto at the time. I went to the kitchen and bam, it just all hit me. As far as being a pantheist, the honest to God truth is I didn't even know that I was a pantheist until Jennifer emailed me and said, hello, hello, fellow pantheist, in the subject line. When she said, hello, fellow pantheist, I read it. I was like, wait a minute, am I a pantheist? And that's pretty much when I realized that I was a pantheist. That what I was saying was aligned with pantheist thinking.
I'm sorry to give you that label there. I just, based on all your arguments, I was like, yeah, that's like, I think I've made that exact argument myself. So yeah. I was just really impressed by it. So I just wanted to say, not to be too much of a fangirl or anything, but it was great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We're both spiritualists, and from I listened to it, even your story, if you're saying that you came to realize that there is a God, and that you could internally access that God, and from your debate with or conversation with Ephraim, not like you need to open up the Bible or come onto some tradition of revelation, that just through experience empirically with the universe or within yourself, that is sufficient. And we don't have to debate, but that's not my school. I'm more a dualist. That there is a God that's external from the material realm, but at least your logic makes sense, and kind of like a Protestant, like personal relationship with Jesus Christ. But you're saying like it's not Jesus Christ that you have a personal relationship with. It's the universe. It's this universal God that is accessible to all. And if you haven't coherently thought out of like a consistent worldview in how to structure it, or like a scientific paper where academic paper where you can't just say what you think, you have to give a historical backdrop. And I've been trying to teach Jennifer so hopefully we'll write books or something, but to be accepted in academia, you can't just be like, this is what I think, even if it flows logically. You have to do an introduction that is historical review that would cover what the previous great minds had thought on the subject, and where your view fits in with the opinions of previous great minds, and what you're saying is new. And it could be like you're not actually claiming to say anything new, or maybe you are claiming to say anything new, or I'm not sure if you're saying that you have some unique connection to God, or that you just have the connection to God that's accessible to everybody. And then on like a logical basis, like T-Jump, who's a master rhetorician, probably even logician, could just poke holes instantly, right at you, just tit for tat, trying like a teacher who you're gonna hand in your paper, and it's going to come back with all these red marks with the possible logical flaws. And you could look at like kind of T-Jump. That's what he does. You hand him, you give him your ideas, and then he hands it back with all the red marks of everywhere you possibly went wrong. But are you saying that you have some unique message from God, or are you saying that you've just tapped into something that in essence is available to everybody?
Okay, so I have a unique relationship with God. So does everyone. Everyone has their own unique relationship with God. So in that, we're all the same, in that we all have a unique relationship with God. So for example, the way God speaks to Einstein was different than the way God speaks to LeBron James, which is different than the way God speaks to, a bird or a cat. You know what I'm saying? God speaks to different things in different ways, and different people in different ways. The message that I did get from God is new. People have never heard this before. I've never heard it before. And I spent the last couple of years trying to understand what it was I just received. So just like no one heard the theory of relativity until Einstein brought it up. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm bringing up a new concept.
How do you know? I mean, not to T-Jump you, but how do you know that? I mean, is it possible that there's someone in China that knows exactly what you know, or there's someone else hundreds of years ago that actually knows everything that you revealed and had written in a book, and that some scholar could be like, no, I'm sorry, JJ, like here's this book written in 1813 that has all this information that you claim was new, and it isn't actually new.
Don't mind Doooovid, he gives everyone a hard time.
Oh, no. I really appreciate that. And I find it to be an act of respect when someone actually challenges me. So thank you for that level of respect to challenge me in this way. But yes, every single piece of what I'm saying is a truth that's already out there. So any one thing I say, you would be able to say, well, somebody else said that, because the truth exists for everybody. So it's not like God is telling me some truth that he's never told anyone else ever. The way in which I'm bringing these truths together, or the way these truths have been brought to me, is what I'm saying is new. Now, if you're saying that maybe someone out there at some single point in time has said the exact same thing I'm saying, is that a possibility? I guess, yeah. If that happens, then it happens. But I have not seen anything close to what I'm saying. And the debate I had with Tom, I didn't say anything that was revealed to me. So on my channel, I lay out exactly the way the universe works. In a video, How Does the Universe Work? The video is called. Anyone can watch it. Anyone can poke holes in it. If anyone wants to debunk Justin, just go ahead, watch the video, and tell me what's wrong with what I said.
Well, I just actually checked your Amazon yesterday. So you have two books, A Layman's Guide to the Universe, and then A Critique of Atheism.
Mm-hmm. The Curious Cult of Atheism.
Curious Cult. So your Layman's Guide to the Universe is your, so to say, revelation of how the universe works, and the Curious Cult of Atheism is
Just a
like a
critique.
critique.
Yes, of atheism.
But you do talk about, so to say, your revelation in the Layman's Guide to the Universe, or is that something else?
Well, the layman's guide. So basically, I'm putting out a model of the universe, and I understand. So the universe is infinite. Basically, I'm saying something that people haven't heard. So in trying to, the hardest part of this is trying to explain what it is I know. Do you see what I'm saying? Because people people have a different understanding of the universe than mine. So sometimes when I say things, it gets misconstrued, or when I ask, someone asks me a question, it's going to take me a lot of explaining. So in order to explain what I'm saying about the universe, I'd have to start from the basics. What is the universe? And basically, the universe is infinite. And basically, what I'm saying is, I understand how the infinite works.
Well, I mean, if you're going to explain in English, or be like Jennifer, who has a background in physics, and in reality, it's going to be equations. It's not going to be, English, or if it's like Revelation, it's going to be like Hebrew or some, like talking in tongues. Are you saying that English is sufficient to explain your understanding?
Oh yes, English is sufficient. It wouldn't be in equations, because the universe equations is how the universe is logically, and the universe doesn't conform to logic. So there are truths about the universe that are illogical. So math equations won't be able to describe them. But everything I could explain everything in English. So, example, I had a good friend of mine when I thought I was going crazy getting this revelation. Remember, I was an atheist when I got this revelation, so I did think I was going a little crazy, and I didn't. Now I'm telling you it's a revelation from God, but in the beginning I didn't think that. I thought I was just going nuts. But everything,
like drugs. Are you saying it was it was like a waking dream? Did you see visions? I mean, like I've studied the Hebrew books that talk about the nature of prophecy, or how God talks to you. If like if you want to talk about the dynamics of how is it that you were revealed something, what type mental state were you in? Were you still seeing with your eyes what your eyes normally see, or did you enter some sort of dream state, or were you seeing nothing, and it was some mental vision? Were there voices, or it was just like a clarity where there was absolutely no voice or nothing in your head, and some sort of like connection to something bigger than you, where you just understood what you were being connected to, and it wasn't in words or vision?
Exactly right. You just explained it exactly. It was no words. There was nothing like that. I just like understood it. It was revealed to me. Thoughts that weren't my own were inside of my head.
On a simple level, like like you had a soul, you have a soul, like I believe you have a soul, even if you didn't believe you had a soul, and then you tapped into your soul and felt your soul, and your soul is connected to God and the universal, and the universe and all truths are contained within your soul, and that maybe there's nothing unique about your experience. You might have a unique insight because every creation of God has unique insights, but like in essence all you did was tap into the power of your soul. Like you don't think like like God chose you as a prophet or something, that's something special. It's saying like you just tapped into the power of your soul, and through that you were revealed truths. And in a simple logic, like the body is the limiting factor, the soul's connected to the infinite, the eternal, and if you shut down the bodily senses and tap into the soul, in essence all truths are contained within the soul.
Yes, all truths are okay. So some people have that type of soul that they seek truth. Not all people have that type of soul, but we could get into that in a moment. But
yes, that's from your type revelation, where you have theories on different people and their type souls.
Well, yes, that does come from my revelation. Some people. So, for example, with you right now, you're trying to find out the truth about my claims. That thing that you're doing right now,
the nature, maybe even just say the nature of your claims.
Yeah, but is what I'm saying true or not? That's the question.
I'm not trying to. No, I'm not even looking like to make a truth value statement, like where you're going to leave and then you're going to be like, he was wrong. It's not true. No. Yeah, I'm just saying, what's the nature of your claims? And you're talking about your personal experience, your personal connection to God and your soul. So like, no, I'm not trying to make a truth value judgment where I'm gonna you're gonna leave the show and they're gonna say he was right on this and wrong on that. I just want to understand the nature of your experience.
I understand, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that certain people have that type of soul where they are seeking truth. You seeking truth is non-biological. Okay, there's no biological reason for you to seek truth in the way that you're doing it right now. There's no biological reason for any of us to be doing this truth-seeking thing. The seeking of the truth is a spiritual journey. Truth is an intangible thing. So atheists are children of God in that they, some of them are children of God in that they seek truth. Not every single soul does this. Some people couldn't give a rat's what about the truth because the truth does not affect them. The truth is not in their soul. The same way you seek truth for no reason, these people lie and make the truth whatever they want it to be for the same no reason. They instinctively do it just like you instinctively seek the truth. So God or the universe speaks to different people in different ways. You asked if what I got was unique. I'm saying yes, it was unique, but so is everyone's experience. So we are all the same in that we have the same unique experience with God. And just like I said, God speaks to Einstein a different way. God speaks to LeBron James a different way. Dr. Dre a different way. He just happens to speak to me in this particular way.
That's an awesome story. Because when I go into telling people the accepted means of transmission of knowledge is revelation and remembrance, they're like, no, it's books.
Well, yes, but you also have to remember, yes. So you're asking me, how do I know this knowledge? And I'm telling you, it's a revelation. Now that we know that, we could completely throw that revelation in the garbage. Okay, nothing I'm saying depends on revelation from God. So I never say something. You have to believe me because it's a revelation. You guys don't know that it's a revelation. You guys. So, for example, if you guys ask me if I ate breakfast this morning, I could say yes, I did, but I don't have any evidence of that. So you guys are just gonna have to take my word for it. If you ask me how do I get this information, I got it via revelation. But you don't have to believe it. Everything I'm saying stands as true by itself. So once I start explaining the universe, it will be true by itself. That it came from God. It came from God or the magical elf that lives under my bed. Okay, where it came from doesn't matter. It is true by itself. Everything I'm saying is.
Well, yes. I mean, I'm a metaphysicist, and I'm promoting even my own theory called multiple truth hypothesis, and in essence, that's what I'm trying to do is give systematic explanations for spiritual phenomenon. So that's my angle. So you said okay, you had a spiritual phenomenon, saying like great, of course, and then I have systematic understandings of how spiritual phenomenon work, and that fits. So not like T-Jump, who is atheist and be rejecting your phenomenon and will explain it according to atheistic terms that you probably did experience something, and then would give some sort of material psychiatric explanation. Me and Jennifer both have our own systems that would likely explain your phenomenon, but obviously you have a different explanation than our understanding. And when you're talking about, metaphysical systems like, like dualism, pantheism, monism, if there's a separate spiritual realm where these ideas and soul functions exist, and they're not really empirical within the material realm, and you could have a systematic explanation for how things like souls and spiritual explanations work, or pantheism, which kind of the universe is God, and saying there isn't a separate spiritual realm, that there is just the universe that is the source of material and spiritual phenomenon. And so if it's like a scientific system, like a cosmology, how is the universe created, how do things like karma, how it rewarded and the wicked punished, and action reaction, and various things that me and Jennifer would say don't happen in the material realm, but happen through other causes, and you have some sort of metaphysical explanation now for how these processes work, or you're saying you have some sort of special insight, like God forbid you're going to say too much, and they're going to God forbid want to put you in a straitjacket, or God forbid you say like God spoke to me, and now I could kill people and get away with it, God forbid, or something like that, because I know who's good and who's evil. versus saying like, no, it was more like a scientific, metaphysical. Are you saying you experience God? And what does it even mean to experience God? Or are you saying you had a singular experience where you were revealed, multiple things? Like it wasn't like you had a narrative where there was some voice told you prose of a bunch of stuff. It was like a singular experience that enlightened you, and then that enlightenment you could express. You could write thousands of pages of words in books to express what happened in that singular moment experience, kind of like Moses, God at Mount Sinai or something like that, where it's just a phenomenon where God revealed himself to to the masses or to the prophet, and then people could explore that singular phenomenon? Or was it something you became self-aware, and then once you became self-aware, then you continued to be self-aware, or is like a process? You had a little glimpse of something, and since then you've been progressively moving forward, receiving more and more wisdom, and just like to break it down metaphysically, like in terms of possible explanations for what happened.
Well, yes, there was an initial like awakening where I started understanding. I understood something different was happening, and in that time I've received more wisdom. And in fact, in that time I've encountered God again in a very extreme time that I don't really talk about, because if I were to talk about that experience that I had with God, I would completely leave Earth. I would be completely out of like people's.
There's no connection to you being Justin James and your body, to who you were born, and the experiences that you had in this lifetime or even previous lifetimes, like reincarnation. It has nothing to do with the body that your soul resides in, or the parental birth and experience that you had up to that point, or is something unique related to your experience and you being who you are, and the birth that you took, or even past life that you had.
Yes, well, everything happens because of who you are. Like God interacts with you based on who you are. So who someone is how God interacts with you. That is what makes us unique. Our unique relationship with the universe. So I had this unique experience with God. But again, like that second experience I had with God that lasted for actually a couple of days. I was in Cambodia at the time. Basically what I do is I pretty much country hop. I pretty much travel the world. I was in Cambodia at the time, and I had another like experience with God, but that I don't talk about, again, because I can't prove any of this. So like what I'm saying, the message I was given, what I'm saying is that it could stand alone by itself. That I got it from God is irrelevant. Okay, the only reason why I talk about my experience with God is if someone asks about it. But I don't even have to mention the word God when I explain the universe.
Yeah, I mean, does it mean that you have, like if you say like Einstein's theory of relativity, so okay, like if he was revealed that or came up with it, it's a scientific theory and it's true independently of him. Like if you now have a systematic explanation for how the universe works, and even one day, we'll die and we'll leave our body, and maybe we'll be reincarnated, but this truth will exist independent of you, and or you're saying that the truth is dependent on you, or you're saying like if it's a revelation about how the universe works, does it, what sense does it make? I mean, does that revelation doesn't exist within your flesh and blood, or even your unique soul? If it's the revelation of the mechanics of how the universe works, is that that presumably that truth existed someplace else and you just tapped into it? Or I mean, these are complicated metaphysical explanations of phenomenon, and if you like this type stuff, this is what we can review. This is what me and Jennifer do. If maybe even work together or try to systematically explain these complicated concepts.
Well, yeah, and so for example, right now I'm working on a project right now to bring this truth out. Basically, this is me trying to figure out what I need to do with this information. And right now I'm working on a project to get it out to the masses. Now, let's say this project I'm working on does get out to the masses, and I do get this message out. After this message gets out, after this understanding of the universe gets out, I could die. You could take my body and throw it in a garbage can and never remember me again. I do not matter. Justin, this thing talking to you does not matter. Okay, the truth of what I'm saying stands alone by itself. I do not matter. The truth matters, and the truth stands alone by itself. This cannot be broken. What I'm saying right now. Believe me, I've tried for years to find holes in it. There are no holes in it. And I'm happy that Jen is a physicist. I mean, maybe we could talk a little bit more about it at some future time.
Yeah, I'm an engineer, and so our background. I went to yeshiva, and I'm Hasidic, and we also have Hindu leanings, but we like to, we don't want to narrowcast ourselves. And most presumably, you'd want to be able to present your ideas in a way that would be accepted in academia, like a scientific paper. I mean, you could build up, write a book. You could have a media, YouTube personality. You could talk, like Cultcraft, creating a cult of personality, or people that follow the teachings or whatever. But in terms of the verification of so to say, the truth of your revelation, you should be done in an academic way, in a way that like even someone with T-Jump would accept. Someone and if you say if academia is based on atheism, but academia at least accepts empirical phenomenon that is what you're saying demonstratable in academic empirical observable phenomenon.
Okay, so what I would say is that the way academia sees the universe, the reason why the universe is so difficult to understand is because the way people are defining it. So the universe to me is so simple because I understand it, and anyone can understand it. It's just that the way they're defining words is very, very difficult. So for example, if I defined a woman is defined as someone who needs to stay in the house, do the cooking and cleaning, never leave the house, never work. That's what a woman is. And then I find in my life that I have difficulty with women. I have difficulty understanding them. And I'm like, oh man, it's so difficult to understand a woman. It's not that women are difficult to understand, but the way I'm defining them is incorrect. I'm defining them incorrectly. And that's the reason why I can't understand them. The reason why people can't understand the universe is because they're defining it incorrectly. And just like people have trouble with women, with black people, with white people, with Jewish people, the way they're defining these people is incorrect. And that's why they're having difficulty understanding them. It's the same thing with the universe. The definitions people are using are incorrect. That's why they can't understand it. It's not that the universe is difficult to understand. Anyone can understand the universe. It is just that simple. But the reason why it takes, again, all these mathematicians and all these people is because the way they're defining it is incorrect. And that's why it's so difficult. Not because the universe itself is difficult. It's simple to understand.
Right, just push back a second, then I'll hand it back to Jennifer. So, I'm saying that generally most systems, at least classical systems like Jewish or Hindu, say like no, the body is a limiting factor, and even if the soul could understand all possibilities, as long as the soul is trapped in the body, there's a limiting factor. That it's ridiculous to assume that any human could even have a scratch of understanding of so to say infinite truth. You might understand certain elements, or if you're on a logical basis, say even though I'm just flesh and blood, one day that will die and return to the ground, that it's a soul that enlivens me, and that soul is connected to all universal truths. And by accessing that soul, not through observation of the external world, but through internal observation of whatever enlivens me, and saying that what enlivens me is in fact what empowers the whole universe. So you could come to understand the whole universe through the power that enlivens me. That generally the classical religious systems say like, no, it is until death sets us free, and the body is a limiting factor to the soul, and then even the question of the origins of souls, and like, are we here as a punishment, like that our souls existed in some different spiritual realm, and we're put into this material realm, and the classical philosophical systems, and you're saying like, no, I have an explanation for the complete cosmology. I could explain the Big Bang, or however the system of the creation, the origins and destinations of souls. And I've mentioned that on my channel, like a lot of gurus or grand rabbis, you said like, no, this guy's a real guru, he knows the origins and destinations of souls. And so you average that's ridiculous. No person knows the origins and destinations of souls. Like when we die and our soul leaves our body, maybe that greater truth will be revealed to us, or he's saying like, no, you were revealed the origins and destinations of souls. You have the answers to those questions.
Okay, yes, I have the answers to those questions. And I have the complete answer to those questions that can be challenged by anyone, and you could try to poke holes in it if you like to. It doesn't depend on any revelation. You said we can't access this infinite truth, or it might be difficult for us to access this.
The limiting factor of residing in the material realm,
Yes.
that the soul is infinite. So in theory, you're right, but the fact that your soul is trapped in your material body, there's a limiting factor. And
Yes.
as long as the soul is trapped in the body, so like from the religious, death will set us free. And until death sets us free, that the soul is limited by the body, and there's nothing that could change that. I mean, you might have a system say like, no, my soul isn't limited by the body. But I mean, classically, most systems look at the body as a limiting factor.
Yes, the body is a limiting factor in the universe. Again, I'd have to explain a lot, but the universe works at depths, and we'll get into that another time maybe. But anyway, you're saying that we can't access this because of the limiting factor of our bodies. What I'm saying is that this infinite truth, the deeper the truth is, the simpler it gets. This understanding that the deeper the truth is, the more complex it gets. No, that's incorrect. It gets complex in this material place, but as you get to the deeper truth, that truth gets so simple a toddler could know it. I could teach this to a 5-year-old and they'll know it. That's how simple the deepest truth is. It gets simpler as it gets deeper. It doesn't get more complex.
If you're saying Judaically, like, yeah, all is one. That's all you need to know. Like, God is one, everything is one, even like pantheism. The universe is God, everything is God. There might be individualistic parts of God that appear individuals, but in essence, everything is part of this one. And like, yes, it is that simple. And,
Yes.
Anybody could understand that. But like, no, I mean, there's complex phenomenon, like, there's microtubules, and there's, reincarnation, and the origins and destinations of souls, and, the quantum periodic table, and all these things. So to say that, like, the essence that it all derives from one or something might be simple, but you're saying it's not like a whole bunch of complex equations, or like cosmology, like the Big Bang or something. You're saying it's something simpler, saying like, yes, it is complicated things that you need, like Einstein's and physics and all these various great thinkers and discoveries, but it's derivative, like Jennifer, that it's derivative from principles, like Jennifer, the I forget how she phrased it, but the imperative, the single axiom, and then everything is derivative from that axiom. Is your system, like Jennifer, where it's axiom and derivatives of axioms, or you have some sort of do you have axioms and derivatives of axioms, or that's not how your system works?
Well, it gets simpler, and as you get outside of it, as you become, I guess, more shallow, it becomes more complex. So, for example, a lot of these questions that scientists are answering, I would call shallow questions. Now, that a question is shallow or the answer is shallow doesn't make it less. So, because I have this deeper truth, and I would say scientists have a shallow truth, that doesn't make my truth better than their truth. It doesn't make what I'm saying superior to what I'm saying. All of this is necessary. But these truths that these scientists are bringing out, these axioms, these, like, what is a black hole? These are shallow truths. Like, I mean, a bird could go its entire life without ever knowing any of this. Human beings could go their entire lives without ever knowing any of this, and live fulfilled, great lives without knowing any of this. And that's what I mean by shallow. It's just, it's cool to know. Okay, cool. What's the temperature of the sun? Awesome.
I mean, you could drive a car without knowing how to make a car. We're using computers, even if we can't make a computer.
Exactly. Like life doesn't require all of this. This is all just like fun stuff to understand about the universe. The simplest.
But if you're saying you know the truth, the answer to all questions, like presumably that also means you could explain how a car works and how the computer works.
I have no idea how a car works. I have no idea how a computer works. I have no idea. You could fill the universe with things I don't know. What I'm saying is that I understand the depth of the universe. I understand what the infinite is. I understand the depth of what we are. I understand our relationship with God. I understand who God is. So, for example, I would say that I could answer any question that you have about God. Any question that you have about God, I can answer.
Well, what's the origin of my soul? I mean, just a simple question. What's the origin and destination of my soul? The basic question that people go to spiritual leaders for, like, what am I here for? Why did my soul enter, this body for birth? And what's going to happen to my soul after I die? Which is probably the single most common, deep question that people seek spiritual leadership for. I mean, besides for how do I live my life when I'm on this planet, which there's a lot of advice to, but generally the question that people in the material realm can't answer is, why am I here? What's the origin? Like I said, what's the origin and destination of my soul?
Okay, so you asked a bunch of questions there. The first question is, what's the origin of my soul? Your soul doesn't have an origin in the way that you mean it. Your soul has always existed. Do you see what I'm saying? So there are depths to us. There's depths to the universe, so there's depths to who I am. So who I am is a physical thing that was born one day and I will die one day. That is one depth of who I am.
Who were you before you were born, and who are you going to be after you die?
Okay, so the deeper part of me, the deeper part of Justin, the essence of me, what you're calling the soul or my consciousness, has always existed. You have to remember, the entire universe always existed. This conversation always existed.
Well, that's why the pantheism. It was like, no, man, as like a Jew, I don't believe the universe always existed. That's why Jennifer classifies you as a pantheist. I believe the universe was created, and so if you believe the universe always existed, you're a pantheist like Jennifer.
Well, no. So, for example, you believe that the universe came into existence. You are correct about that. The universe came into existence. That is one type of real at this depth. So the universe must have come into existence for me to have been born. I started at one point. My mother started at one point. Her mother started at one point. There was some ultimate start to this, to have started all of these starts. Okay, but that's not the full picture. That's not the deepest part of what's happening. So the universe, basically, at a deeper depth, when I'm saying that it always existed, it must have always existed, because there's no such thing as nothing. If the universe started, so for example, the word universe means everything. Everything in the universe are the same word. Okay, so everything must have always existed, because there's no such thing as nothing. Nothing would be the only limit to everything. So I guess that would be the most basic concept, and we could start there. The universe and everything in it always existed. The reason why the universe and everything in it always existed was because there's no such thing as nothing. Nothing is the only limit to everything. So,
or
for
what
example,
about creation ex nihilo? I said, Judaic, Greek believe creation ex nihilo, that it was created out of nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So that idea, exactly. So you believe that it was created out of nothing. That's where you got it wrong, because there's no such thing as nothing. Nothing being the absence of anything.
Well, it's the Hebrew name for God, Jehovah, which is the permutation of the word to be, that was, that is, that will be. I mean, saying Jehovah, like in biblical theory, existed before the universe, because Jehovah is that always was, that always will be, but created the universe out of nothing.
Gotcha.
That's the typical, biblical Western canon, type belief. So you're saying your revelation is in opposition to mainstream the biblical Western narrative.
No, but what I'm saying is that if an atheist were to tell you that, no, God did not create the universe sprang out of nothing, you would be opposed to that worldview, that the universe could spring out of nothing without a God. You would be opposed to that, and you would use the same arguments I'm using, that there's no such thing as nothing, so the universe could not have popped into existence from nothing. Remember, that is a huge atheist understand. Well, a lot of atheists believe that the universe just popped into existence from nothing.
Yeah, I'm generally in like the Freemasonic camp. Like, I'm more practicing Hasidic Jew with Hindu leanings, but I propose a multiple truth hypothesis, which somewhat like Freemasonic, that that this God that always existed, always will exist outside of the material realm, has multiple aspects or truths or revelations, that even if what you're saying is contrary to the revelations, to me and my ancestors, does not mean what you're saying is not true in some sort of greater Freemasonic principles, and what I personally call the multiple truth hypothesis. So that's the frame that I'm taking it from.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that if God is this infinite God that you're talking about, the universe means everything. So what I'm saying is that if God is in existence, he's part of the universe, because the universe means everything. But let's get away from my definition and go to yours. You're saying that there's this infinite thing that started everything else, that started this universe from nothing. Like, God just made it appear from nothing. There was nothing in existence, and then all the materials of this universe came from nothing. And what I'm saying is that there is no nothing for the universe to have come from. That state of being, that nothing state of being, does not exist. There's no such thing as the absence of anything.
Well, if you want, I could explain to you the Kabbalistic conception, but I guess we're more here to hear what you have to think. I mean, if you're interested, I could explain to you my understanding of the Kabbalistic conception of how this works. But I'll hand it back to Jennifer, because we're more here to hear what you have to think. But they say no, I do more in line with the Kabbalistic conception, and Jennifer doesn't necessarily agree with that either. She's more in line with your thinking. So I guess I'll hand it back to her.
Well, I thought maybe this would be a good time to go over the debate with T-Jump. I just wanted to know if you thought, like, how did you think it went? Because I noticed you got a lot of hate. We can debate it sometime.
Like, I'm happy to talk with you. Like, we can even schedule a stream a different time, and we could debate, the Kabbalistic conception versus your conception. But I mean, your conception's interesting, and actually, it's more in line with Jennifer's than mine, probably.
Okay, yeah, I would love to. I mean, basically, it all boils down to whether or not nothing exists. So there's one idea that the universe always existed, and there's another idea that there is this concept called nothing that is in existence, and things could come from it.
From the Kabbalistic conception that like the Jehovah that always was creates a void, that there was no nothingness. That first God creates nothingness, and then that is the Kabbalist right. God created a void within, so to say, himself, and then within that void that God created within himself arose the material realm. So from the Kabbalist conception, creation ex nihilo means that this eternal God that always was, always will be, first created nothingness, which means like a void within himself, in order that the material realm could come into conception. That's basically how the Kabbalists lay out this concept of creation ex nihilo, that nothingness, in fact, is a creation also. So it wasn't that the universe was created out of nothingness, that God first creates nothingness in order that the universe could be created.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. But even if you describe nothing as a void, void takes up space. So void would be something. Everything in existence is something.
Oh my God, I made the exact same argument on my blog.
Great minds think alike, huh?
Well, me and Jennifer have had these arguments before in the past. And she's the one who found you, and your system's more in line with hers than mine. But if you want, we could. Jennifer did. I showed her this flowing technique, which is kind of like just academic. If you do debate in high school, just a technique for writing and following your arguments. There's like a science of argument map, like a flow chart that shows the structure of arguments. So like T-Jump, you talk for an hour or so, and you add a lot of back and forths. So to create some sort of visualization flow chart of what were the arguments, and a visualization for how the back and forth of those various arguments work. So I mean, Jennifer went through quite a bit of work on your so to speak debate with T-Jump to create a visualization of the arguments, because if you and T-Jump spoke for an hour or so, and there were thousands of words, like it's not a picture and or like a logical representation, like a flow chart. So she went through the work to actually create a visualization of that interaction, which on a deeper level would be like like I said, like you could maybe write a book that gives an explanation of your worldview or your revelation, or you could draw a diagram. And then if you wrote a book, maybe if you were in the process of writing, or you already wrote books, I don't know if you wrote a flow chart or how you went about writing your book, if you just started writing, or if you did like the normal academic process of creating a flow chart and then chapters and things like that. But like I'm more trust the process and type person. So I tried to convince Jennifer that she should do these procedural type things to improve her performance. And so I was kind of insistent that she create these flows, because when I had debate in high school, I had to do this.
Oh,
yeah. So just real quick, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I'm when it comes to the debate and stuff like that, I'm completely here to learn from you guys, because you guys seem to be like, you guys know I have no idea about any of this, so I'll just be sitting here learning.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, so I think we got a little feel for your at least your spiritual idea experience. Like it doesn't necessarily matter your bodily conception, your karma, like who you took birth to or what you did in your material body till you came to the revelation. So why don't we let Jennifer show her breakdown of your interaction with T-Jump.
Yeah, so Doooovid has this flowing thing, but it's a bit like I'm a highly technical person. It wasn't precise enough for me to get it working because it just seemed too subjective to me. Like I just want to be purely objective, go through the arguments. But the first thing I want to do is just jump to breaking it down logically and pointing out the flaws in the logic. So the only thing I would think to do would be like a logical diagram, which would include the assumptions that you make, which I call axioms, and then the conclusions based on those axioms. Okay. So it's a question of how strong are the axioms plus how are you putting them together. That would be what I would be really interested in terms of debate, but you can't really do that usually because people don't necessarily make their axioms explicit. So there's a lot of assumptions that sort of get swept under the rug into these debates. And that's why you sort of see a lot of the modern day debates go off the rails, right? Because nothing was established at the outset. Mm-hmm. It's like, what do we mean when we say universe or God or what have you? Because it just ends up being a lot of the times like a burning straw man festival. So it's like each person misrepresents the other's opinion in a facile way and then deconstructs that opinion because it's easier. But I'm trying to encourage people to, like what you were doing, is make positive assertions and build their arguments up from the very basis, because the certainty of an argument is 100%, or not 100%, but is very highly dependent on the assumptions you make before proceeding to make an argument. So what I did was basically, this isn't the entire debate. This is maybe 40 minutes. It's a chunk of it. And I thought it was maybe the meatiest chunk in terms of a conversational exchange where a lot of good arguments got made by you, Justin. I didn't really think T-Jump made many great arguments. I'm not super convinced by atheists. And the more they double down on their positions, I find like the less I'm impressed by them, because they just try to like throw everything at the kitchen sink. It's like, oh, it's consciousness isn't immaterial. Consciousness is definitely a qualia consciousness. We already know what consciousness is, even though they've basically set themselves up for an impossible standard, right? Because science doesn't have the means to prove anything. And then they say they believe in science, and then they demand that the theists presenting their theses provide evidence to support their position. But it's like, that kind of evidence, by definition, doesn't exist, because science, the type of evidence that science provides that's quick in terms of the conclusions it can draw, is evidence that discounts a possible model, not one that substantiates a possible model. If a model is substantiated by experiment, that doesn't necessarily make it correct, because the model is hinging on metaphysical assumptions that you can't validate with the experiment. So you always have axioms that are tacit, that most people don't take the time to actually go through them and actually say what they are, because if they did that, then a lot of their arguments they'd realize weren't really grounded on anything. And so that's why I'm always encouraging people to go back to your first principles, go back to your axioms. But in the meantime, until people can get to that point, because when people are at that point, basically will be very little to disagree on. But what I did was I figured I would break the exchange down into, I think it's 6 different categories of speech. So this is sort of open to evolve or whatever in the future, because I've already changed it a little bit, because I want to distinguish between a positive assertion and a negative assertion. Because like you put all this energy into making a good argument, all this time, and then the person on the other side is just like, no, I don't think so. That's wrong. It's like, I don't want to count a negative assertion as much as I count a positive assertion, even if the positive assertion is wrong, because you're not really saying anything. You're actually kind of diminishing the information of the conversation if you assert a negative, because you're not saying anything that can help develop anything farther. You're just saying what something isn't. And you have no way based on your own axioms to evaluate the truth of your own position is basically feels. It feels like it's right, but it's like you're just repeating what everybody else has said. So you obviously, didn't think this through too much. So we've got positive assertions, negative assertions, questions, answers, leading question. I don't know if you know what that is, but just real quick for anybody who doesn't know what a leading question is, just watch Claire Coffer 0.3 seconds or more, and you'll see it's basically like, so when did you stop killing babies, right? There's your prime example. So there's like an implicit guilt or whatever. I really don't like leading questions. I think sometimes, like if you look up how they're used in law, it does actually make sense. And that's when you're dealing with what's called a hostile witness, right? So somebody who has been established they're not really cooperating. And it's considered acceptable to ask leading questions in order to elicit the information the case requires. So sometimes it could be cool, but if your whole thing is just peppered with nothing but leading questions, it starts to sort of raise eyebrows as regards your good faith or lack thereof. So my
question
go ahead.
that prompts or encourages the direct, the desired answer. So, I mean, a leading question is basically where you're giving the answer that you want the person to say. You're not really asking a question, but you're trying to verify that the answer you want to give is the correct answer. So it's not really a question. It's kind of like, isn't this what you're saying? And and it could even put it in like a yes no, but it's usually like hostile, where like T-Jump is saying like, oh man, this guy is ridiculous. This guy's no clue what he's talking about. So let me just assume that I'm so much smarter than the other person that I'm going to explain to the person what they really want to say, and the other person is just going to agree or disagree that that's what they're really trying to say. And if you don't want to put it in pejorative, like that's just what T-Jump does. Like he wasn't there for you to, discuss his system. He was just there to basically show the logic and flaws. You could look at him like like I said, your teacher. You handed in a paper, and he put a bunch of check marks, red X's, and stuff all over your ideas.
Except
and the leading question,
everybody.
The leading question is saying like you don't even know how to explain what you're saying, so he has to explain to you what you really, what you're really trying to say, and so it's a pretty common technique. And T-Jumps maybe established himself enough that he has his own audience, where basically he's just, but it doesn't have to be in pejorative, but like exposing people or correcting their mistakes, and presumably from his end he has earned or qualified for that right to be in the position where he will be exposing the flaws in your system or correcting the mistakes in your ideas, and has to, in leading questions, are a sign of that. So like hopefully if someone went over this interview or this conversation, hopefully I didn't ask any leading questions, because that's not my way of looking at it, because I'm granting that there is
you
truth.
ask like 3 leading questions in a row, so they all kind of balance each other out.
You could put leading questions as a way of taking what you said and me putting it in my own words to make sure that I actually got it, which is that's how real conversation and information exchange works, because you say something in your own way of understanding it, and to ensure that I got and understood what you said, I will take what you said and repackage it in my own words in what will be like a leading question, like, is this what you said? But I'm not just repeating back what you said, I'm packaging it in my own words. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be pejorative, like the point is to belittle what you said, but it's just to demonstrate that I understood what you said by putting it in my own words.
Well, it's sort of like establishing whether a witness is hostile. It's a bit of a gray area at times. So I think a lot of it is in the tone, right? If you're just like, do I understand you correctly, blah, 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 that's not going to come across as a hostile type of, the way I would normally sort of class leading questions as a poor strategy. It's true, they do have a definite application. So I think the good, the, whatever signpost is whether it's hostile. And you can tell usually by the tone, because someone will be like, well, you mean that? Like they become, I don't know how to phrase it exactly, but you can usually catch it. It's audible. So if anyone wants to try doing something like this, the nice thing about this approach is that you can apply it to anything, not just a debate. So the idea is that when you do a debate, it should look a certain way. There should be a certain distribution of these different types of speech. So if everyone's following to this point, what I've done is just the arguments themselves aligned by speaker. So in the first column, it would be, I think I got
I
Justin.
interrupt you after leading question. So if you want to go back to the note, so you had just been on purple leading question, so you still have the brown and the red.
Right. So those are rebuttal and second rebuttal. So the first rebuttal is like when someone says something and then you go against it. If they then go against what you're saying, that's red. So the idea is that you don't want to be in the red for too long, because then you're just off in the weeds, right? You're hair splitting. It's like, well, someone says something and then someone says, well, no, it's not, and then the other person says, well, no, it's not, but it's the, like, you're not switching topics type deal, like with the last modern day debate where they were talking about God and it ended up getting into like the penness of a pen, and it was like 30 minutes on this absolutely atrocious metaphor. Like, I don't know how you could make Plato seem unsympathetic. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. So once you have this, alternating columns are the different speakers. Because if you just make one column, it just ends up being this incredibly unwieldy, this is an Excel file, or it started out as one. So I got all the different colors. And then what I'm going to do is basically chunk it out, chop it up. And that's in order to bring the information out of it or highlight the information content. So what I've done here is basically clustered everything Justin said on one side and everything Tom said on the other. So that starts to bring out a little bit more of the difference. So you kind of get a sense from the diagrams at the top, which is just a dot by dot representation of the color, that there was sort of a vibe of definitely Justin making more positive assertions. So when I see something like this, I think it's more of a teacher or even an interrogation vibe. Because you see Tom was really heavy on the leading questions. So it's like, when you get leading questions, well, if you're under arrest, maybe the cops are interviewing you, they might do that. So it's like, you want to do a debate. You don't want to feel like you're in a like interrogation with the cops, right? So there's kind of a fine balance, because part of making your point sometimes relies on drawing out your opponent's point, but you got to look at it on the whole, aesthetic of the whole debate. If you have to wonder how you got on a topic and it's been 20 minutes, and you're talking about pens and you can't get your point across, pull stumps and change course immediately. So I'll just zoom in a little bit. But hopefully that's clear as to what's happening. I'm just really just clustering the parts of speech along the speakers so you can kind of get a bit of a color reference to the proportions of the types of speech per person. So this would sort of give you the impression that Justin was teaching Tom rather than a proper debate. Because in a proper debate, it'd be about 50-50 for a lot of these things. So in terms of positive assertions, Justin had made a lot more. So I thought that was, I qualified that as a strong advance, but he also brought a lot of negation, which means he was correcting Tom's misapprehension or misrepresentation. And then you notice it's funny because Tom was like super balanced on everything except for the nag factor. Like he was really coming back with a no use type thing. And not to say there isn't a place for those, like, balance and such, but you don't want to look like you're too heavy in any one direction. Even the teaching one, like if it's supposed to be a debate, you don't want to carry the whole show. You want to have both people more or less presenting the same amount of information, i.e. making their points and having it be a good balance. That's what makes for a good debate. So thanks for listening. And I hope that was insightful for you. But yeah, I thought you made you made your points really well. And like, you got so much hate on that. I couldn't believe it. I was looking at the comments. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with these people?
They're very, yeah. Like I said,
irate.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you went into an atheist channel, so I mean, obviously like presumably no one there accepted what you said, and unless you changed some minds, or maybe you did change a handful of minds, or your own people that were there for you, I mean, that's as expected. Like, you were debating an atheist on his channel, so obviously no one there agreed with you, and the interaction could somewhat be expected like that.
Well, absolutely. And yeah, I didn't expect anything, more than that. I just pretty much wanted to get my point across. But I think one of the biggest concessions that I got from Tom was that there is a fundamental essence that's causing everything to be what it is. And I basically just said, well, that fundamental essence is what people are calling God. I mean, he said that it was at 1 hour and 10 minutes into the debate, he agreed that there's a fundamental essence or force that causes the universe to do what it does. And I was like, well, that's exactly what I'm calling God. So I consider that one concession pretty much the win of the debate.
Yeah, but to me, it seemed he basically claimed will try to establish and frame it like he's speaking on behalf of established science and philosophy. Like established scientists and philosophers are majority atheist, and established science and philosophy has largely a working system that explains the phenomenon that we see in our life. And, although it may not answer all questions perfectly, that's what we're going with. And, if he has the home court advantage, he's just working with the assumption that, that he is already on the side of science, logic, and philosophy, and you with an alternative system presumably is because you're not on the side of science, logic, and philosophy. So whether he actually is on the side of science, logic, and philosophy, he doesn't really establish that. He just kind of frames it like he is. And then within that framing, he's just looking for the flaws in your system. So the same with Jennifer, and that's the nature probably of his style, or even how he does his debates, because he's not necessarily defending atheism. He's working with like this pre-established principle that, like, of course atheism is true, of course all scientists and philosophers are atheists, and this petty person that, like, it's good that you're actually thinking and using your mind, but obviously you're wrong. And so that, I mean, that's his nature, and saying he's got he's one of the bigger streamers of atheism in America. He's got his own channel, and he's the regular on modern day debates, and he makes money off of it. So I'm not I disagree with him, but I'm not here to pick on T-Jump. I mean, he was just doing what he was doing, and obviously if you chose to speak to him, you knew that's what he was going to do. And and I don't think he was mean or unprofessional to you relatively, but he's just like, no, I don't believe what you're saying. I'm sorry, and did his best to do that. And then he's pandering to his own audience in a certain way that most of the people there were his own people. They weren't your people. They weren't your people coming to see how you handle with him. It was basically his people, just like Jennifer when she was on Modern Day Debate. There might have been a handful of her people that were there to see how she did, but it was mostly his people, just there to see him, quash another flat earther type. And he basically dealt with you and Jennifer the same way he deals with flat earthers, and just like expose, the logical flaws and inaccuracies in your system. But like, no, he wasn't I don't think he was a bad guy. He wasn't, disrespectful or personal attacks or anything like that. And relatively, he's, I even put him up there as a professional debater, even though, he's an atheist, in my opinion, on the wrong side of quite a few issues.
Well, yeah, I think the debate, the discussion between us went well. Like I said, I didn't know him before I talked to him. So basically, I know I have the truth, so I'm willing to talk to anybody. It doesn't matter to me. I did feel as though when he was talking, he was saying a lot of things that just like weren't correct. Like scientists all believe that like every single thing in existence is physical. I was even trying to like really understand. Are you saying imaginations are physical? And he was saying, yeah, imaginations are physical objects. And I was trying to like really figure that out. Like really, like what type of physical, like do they have? I asked him in there, like what are they made of? Like, are imaginations made of atoms? Or like do they have a weight? So I guess I was trying to figure out like where he was coming from. But again, I think even when he said that physics like explains everything in the universe, physics explains all subjects. I mean that's just false. I have I was trying to get a physicist to talk on my show, and I asked him the same question: can physics describe the entire universe? And in an email, I was trying to get another debate with Tom. I have one scheduled, but he hasn't confirmed it yet, so I'm not even sure if it's going to happen. But I have an email from a physicist right here where I asked the physicist the same question: can physics describe the entire universe? And his answer was obviously not. Like, what happens inside of a black hole? What's dark matter? He says. He even says that like biology brings up problems for physics. I mean, but Tom was saying that no, physics is everything. Physics describes everything. But and this guy is a professor at Duke University of physics. I mean, so obviously Tom is not speaking for scientists. He's just saying a lot of what I would call like nonsense. It's just not true. And again, like at the end of the discussion, when I got that concession that there's a fundamental essence that's causing everything, I mean that fundamental essence is what people are calling God. I mean, I think some people even use the term essence in describing what they would call God as a fundamental essence or a force that is the cause of the order in the universe. That's the cause of everything that we see around us.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, but philosophically, you're giving a version of the transcendental argument that Jay Dyer's famous for. I went over these more technically, academically, of like the ontological and the various classical arguments for God, and what you argued would be largely in the category of the transcendental argument that you need some sort of precursor framing to understand metaphysics, and that precursor framing is in fact God, and without God, you can't actually frame logic in science. So, in a certain extent, that you gave the similar transcendental argument that Jay Dyer is probably the most famous current streamer who uses that technique.
Well, yeah. I'm not familiar with all this with these people.
Obviously, you're not the first person to debate an atheist. People have been debating atheists for thousands of years, and so to classify the major 4 or 5 ontological, theological, first cause type arguments. The transcendental has been one of the common ways that people have been debating atheists for about 800 years, and so obviously you're not the only one who's debating atheist, and it's not like atheism isn't a new thing.
Oh no, I agree. But so for example, earlier in the discussion, I said that a void is something, and Jennifer said, "Oh yeah, I use that same argument." I don't know Jennifer, nor have I seen her arguments. So we people are making the same arguments even though they've never heard of each other. Is what I'm saying. So I haven't heard of these philosophers ever before, but it makes sense that we could all be saying the same arguments. Just like I made an argument that Jennifer made, even though I've never met Jennifer, I've never seen any of her debates.
Yeah, and even if it's not like the exact argument, saying the framing for how you look at it, in saying that you were coming on that that you need that this order that he claims that he's making a false axiom assumption that doesn't have a basis, and that really you need God to make that first axiom that he makes. So it's a classical logical form of an argument against atheism, is that you can't really even understand anything without first assuming God. And so if you call that order, and if you getting him to say that yes, there is an underlying order that he's assuming, and logically he doesn't have a reason to make that assumption, and so you're calling that somewhat a victory, that's comparable to thousands and thousands of debates against atheists where there that is under the general framework of what's called the transcendental argument. And I'm more academic, and like I said, you got to start with the history of these ideas, and so usually it goes back to the Greeks. If it's philosophy, usually you got to start with the Greeks. And even though maybe a lot of what you're saying is newer in a different way, that the general framing of these arguments, it's unlikely that it's not going to be something that the Greeks were smart people and had schools and rhetoricians and debates for hundreds of years. So it's unlikely that you're going to have something that's completely out of line or that the Greeks didn't do before.
Oh no. Oh, I guess what I'm saying is that so the arguments I'm using for why God exists have probably been used 10,000 times. Like I just said, I just gave you an argument that Jennifer has already used. Not that I know her or that I met her or that I think that I'm so unique that no one has ever said anything that I say. When it comes to the uniqueness of a claim I'm making, what I'm saying is unique about what I'm saying is the model of the universe, the way I'm saying the entire universe works. My arguments for God have probably been used a million times before. My arguments for why I might support a Democratic candidate has probably been used before. So just because I have a revelation from God doesn't mean that every single thing I'm saying is unique. You know what I'm saying? I'm probably saying, you know what I mean? What I am saying that was a win from, and I don't think we're saying the same thing, but please correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm saying is a win from Tom is the fact that we're saying that the universe is ordered. Okay, that's what the word cosmos means. The cosmos means ordered, and there's a cause for that order, and the cause for that order is a fundamental essence or a force that is causing the order of the universe. That is what he agreed to. That is what the concession was. And all I'm saying is that fundamental force or that essence that we both agree is causing the order of the universe is what some people are calling God. That is it. That's certainly what pantheists are calling God.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show to answer our questions. I hope we can do another stream where you can go into your model in deeper detail. And I also have a physics model, so it's really nice to not be the only person with their own physics model who can actually talk about it. So I'm really looking forward to that exchange.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Did you have any more questions for the guest, Doooovid?
Yeah, but we do this every Sunday, and promote debate, and say we're into metaphysical systems, and so we definitely found your conversation interesting, and I didn't look at your books yet because I just saw them earlier today, but if you want to come back again or discuss something, you'd be in touch, or even if you want to maybe I'll take if you're interested, reach out and maybe we could or I do on my channel, I have a separate channel, I could interview you specifically on your books because I do more, I'm more academic, I like to read, so maybe like an author interview where I'll have to get your books and read your books, and then we could schedule talk, and I'm more structured in that way where it would probably be more directly on your books or something, or like an author interview if that interests you.
I would love that. Actually.
But we do this every Sunday, week in review. So we also like to promote streaming. So so say you want to get your ideas out there or speak to people. Me and Jennifer are both tech people, so like if we probably Jennifer or me would probably be willing to help you out with your tech, or so you got you have less than 100 subs now, so take a little bit of time to build up your subs. And
speaking of which, the link to Justice's channel is in the description, so please give him a sub. He's got some interesting debates up there, and we're really looking forward to whatever he's going to be putting up there next.
Yeah, if you ever want to just come on here and tell us what you're doing, the advancements you're making, or week in review, so I said like what shows you're appearing on, who you're speaking with, or who you want to speak with, type thing, or if you actually want to set up more conversations, like we've been doing this for a while and have an established network, so if you wanted to work within our network, feel free. Every Sunday night, we've been doing this for almost 2 years now.
Absolutely, and definitely I would love to make friends, and this technical way you guys have of looking at debates, I definitely would love to learn more about this. How can I be a better communicator? I definitely would love to learn more about that.
That's why we can review. So we're both content creators and do other things. So this is the Sunday night, week in review where we, introduce new personalities, and you basically self-improvement. So like if you want, we'll set up an author interview. Saying that that's actual content as opposed to just the week in review. That's generally the review of content.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and please, you could. My Jennifer has my email. You're free to have it, and yeah, I would love to keep in
Oh,
contact.
maybe if you want, if you don't mind, maybe I'll add you on Facebook if you have your
Oh.
Facebook linked in your stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to add you on Facebook, and you'll see my real name, David Kelton,
Okay.
and then I'll try to get it download. I'll try to get your books off Amazon, and then maybe in a week or two we'll
Actually,
schedule an author interview.
Oh, absolutely. But actually, I could just send you a free copy, so you don't have to buy it. I could send you 2 free copies of the books.
Okay, great.
If I have your email, yeah.
Okay, great. So looking forward to that. And we sometimes go on for hours, Sunday night. So, we got a community of interesting characters, and we're global also. So, we get global characters, people from all over the world. So, interesting network. And the nature of the technology is the IRL people don't necessarily have that much time to, people are trapped in the material realm, in material concerns. When people meet in person, often trump intellectual concerns. So, through doing it online, you could cipher out people that are uniquely interested in these ideas, and so it's an interesting forum, and you might find that there's people all over the world that really, other than through this technology, would be hard to meet, and then through this technology you could have group conversations or debates or content that is narrowly divided on ideas in conversations around these specific ideas for people that are interested in these type conversations.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I'm very I'm thankful to be on the show. Thank you guys for having me, and I definitely look forward to doing our future shows. And yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming on. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
What's up, Gandalf? Thanks for joining the show. Haven't seen you in a while and want to catch us up on what's been going on in Gandalf land.
A lot of exciting adventures in wage cucking, so unfortunately I've been missing out on some really exciting stuff. So I'm more just want to be a fly on the wall to learn about the fact that the whole world is becoming pantheistic. All at once, it seems.
Were you actually in my chat with Antariksha Das? Because I know someone came on with your name and picture, and they said it wasn't you, looked like a troll, but it looked like it was actually you in the chat, but it wasn't. It
was, and I listened to.
But it wasn't you who came on. Like, it was someone who just copied your profile and name and tried to troll me.
Oh, I was only in the chat. I didn't try and.
Okay, yeah, because I guess that's a new technique. So you were in the chat, and then I put the link in. Someone actually used your name and profile picture as a way for me to add them to the stream, and then I was able to stop it before they foreign bombing or whatever. But just ironic that like I guess it's a good trolling strategy.
I suppose it's not the kind of stuff I do, and I'm sure that person didn't sound like me at all.
No, I mean, they went straight into like trying to porn bomb her music, but I was saying when it came on the Google link, the StreamYards, it was it said Gandalf White 2, and it was an exact copy of the picture that you're using.
It must have been after I must have fallen asleep somewhere during the middle of the stream to catch a pre-work nap, because I know I ducked out.
I thought maybe you were going to argue with them about this, whether vegetarianism could be from like the anti-white agenda, but it turned out to just be a troll. But I thought that would have been an interesting conversation, and that's not what I believe. But if you were going to give that argument of is the push for vegetarianism from some so to say larger anti-European agenda, so that what looked like some of the comments you were making in the chat, and possibly I thought, you were coming on to talk about with this senior Hare Krishna disciple, about that, but it wasn't. It was just a troll.
Yes, it was just a troll. I was only in the chat. I never.
But you did make those comments that you did.
Yes.
Somewhat agree that the vegetarian agenda is possibly from a larger anti-European agenda.
Oh, I most certainly believe that. I think because of just from what I know about the natural evolution of Europeans over the course of tens of thousands of years within Europe, we've evolved to be quite carnivorous because we don't have quite the variety of plant life that other biospheres and continental, I guess, ecological zones have. So to be promoting very strict vegetarianism to Europeans might actually harm them or harm us, because I think we're quite carnivorous by nature, almost because of our evolutionary past, as far as I know.
So why don't we let Jennifer make any concluding remarks about JJ, and then you will hand it to Gandalf to do like a 6-month in review. What has he been up to? Whatever information you want to share, and then we could decide what we want to talk about.
I'm just glad to see the arguments being put forward by someone other than me, and I hope to continue to work with Justin in the future to develop our debating culture, because that's really what we need, is passionate people. And he's obviously been awakened and has a unifying focus in his life, and he'll be able to, I think, gather the discipline required to participate meaningfully. So I'm very excited about it.
Okay, so Gandalf, you were a big streamer. You were like on Halsey and Luke Ford, and you were here all the time for hours. We couldn't even get rid of you. You'd come on at the beginning and stay to the end, and then you disappeared. And you popped in a few times, and you said like you moved or you're doing some sort of organization. But if you don't want to share any personal information, you don't have to. But if you want to, you can. And whatever you want to say about where you've been, what you've been up to, feel free. And then definitely like streaming, if you've been doing any streaming or plan on getting back into streaming, share that, because you were from probably the most common guests and regulars on Week in Review for even a year, probably a year straight.
Well, the number one issue is lots of wage cucking, unfortunately, because of just leaving the city and changing my living situation. So that's the number one reason. And so it makes doing everything else quite a bit more difficult. And I'm currently off of back-to-back 12-hour shifts. So it's just the time is an acute issue for me right now. And I feel really sad because I miss the marathon streams, even the marathon streams with Claire. And I heard that there was a marathon stream with Claire, and I missed the whole thing. I think for me personally, I just can't talk to that.
Yeah, right reaction in Berlin now. Like, you probably love that stream, but I guess he maybe went to sleep because it was, we were going to have him on, but Berlin's probably like 4 a.m. now. But yeah, there's other stuff. Like if you got back into streaming and, if you're working and saying like Doooovid's selling books now, my eBay business is doing pretty good. I became a bookseller on eBay, but like if you got to work, I mean, you're a smart guy. I don't know if you're making the big bucks. Like I'm always arguing money is karma, and in reality is the largest correlation to monetary success is in fact IQ, although not all high IQ people necessarily become wealthy or like a path, but factually the biggest correlation to wealth is IQ.
Yes, I'm very familiar with that argument. Is there anything, how would the correlation between the amount of money in the bank and good karma, what are some connections between that observation and anything new you've come up with in the multiple truth hypothesis?
Well, I mean, the money as a parallel to karma is different than the correlation of money and IQ. But I mean, it could be related. That was saying that the reason presumably IQ is so correlated to wealth, because wealth is correlated to education, and education is correlated to IQ. And then for people who aren't educated, that just understanding how the system works and being able to find loopholes, or not even loopholes, but just a method within the system to create wealth from understanding how things work, like a middleman merchant type thing. We're just saying that, like supply and demand, that this stuff you could buy at this price from here and sell for this price at there, or various things, that IQ is the most determinative factor for someone's ability to accumulate wealth, although some maybe type, your type person.
Karma.
Well, I'm saying that money as karma is a metaphysical system, that money as a representation of karma is a metaphysical understanding of how the material world works, or the combination of the material and spiritual realm. So that's a different thing than the correlation between IQ and wealth. So just saying that what determines a person's ability to make wealth, if you say it's basically through the acquirement of good karma, and then trading, in the material representation of that good karma is monetary wealth, versus even if you said what's the biggest determinant of good karma, you say, well, it's IQ, that you could be a good person and a nice person and try to help people out, but a person with a really good heart versus a person with a really good heart and high IQ, the person with a really good heart and high IQ is going to be able to help out a lot more people than just a person with a really good heart. So there's two separate points: the metaphysical understanding of how money works, and to look at money as representative of karma, and then just saying that the biggest indicator or correlate of wealth is IQ. And if Gandalf is a smart guy, has a high IQ, it should relatively, be easy for him to make money. And we've talked about that multiple times on the stream. The way you could turn IQ into wealth, by understanding things that other people can't understand, that have high economic value, like computer programming, or just skill sets of things that pay $50, $100 an hour that your average person couldn't do. Or I mentioned sales of complicated equipment or various things that your average person couldn't understand, like 3D printers type things that you could make huge commissions on by using your high IQ to understand how technical equipment works, and then sell it. Like I mentioned, that you should hang out at the McCormick Expo Center or something, various ways. But it could be that your personality would make it difficult for you to translate your IQ into wealth. Saying that yes, Gandalf is smart enough that he could hang out at McCormick and become a salesman for some sort of expensive equipment that he would make huge commissions in sales, but he doesn't want to do that, or just any type of intermediary service, and just like networking, that that if you're smart enough to know hundreds of thousands of names, like to go places, and any correlate for what it takes to be successful in a monetary field, you're going to find, there's always a combinatory of factors, but the most important factor is likely to always be IQ. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I think the evidence, the research and studies show it, and just the straightforward logic is pretty clear. But it doesn't, so if you're, like working crap work, you're a smart guy and you're working, like for minimum wage, it's probably something to do with your personality.
Well, I've never been a huge fan of commerce.
Yeah, so see, if you're smart, but you refuse to avow yourself to the system, and we discussed that last time about marriage. You say, okay, you're so smart, how come you haven't reproduced? And we were talking about Christianity, or just saying because no woman wants to have children. Not saying no woman, but most women don't want children that are going to be outside of the system, because it's very dangerous, and the chance of survival outside of the system. So if you are completely given up on the system, and you're saying I'm awesome and have all these good qualities, but our children are going to have to be raised outside of the system, that's why you're single and have no children. And that could also be, you might be very smart, you might be able to understand these things, but your refusal to operate within the system will make it near impossible for you to acquire wealth, and the same will make it near impossible for you to find a wife and have children, because those are systematic things. And commerce and making money basically has to be done within the system, as generally finding a wife and having children has to be done within the system, not outside of the system.
In what way sorry, frog in my throat. In what way would it be possible to think of other correlates with good karma that signify wealth other than money?
Well, just service rendered. That so say people acquire money because they give services or products to other people that they consider valuable, and that's what I'm saying. Good karma, in the essence, like, okay, like if like I set up your computer, or I sold you books that you really wanted, that's an expression of good karma, that I provided something that you wanted. And money, the transfer of money from the person who got what they wanted to me, is an exchange of a representative of good karma. So like you don't need a high IQ in that manner. I mean, we discussed, we were debating, I was telling Jennifer that promiscuous woman also generally is not because they're attractive, it's because they're high IQ. But if you like the exchange of someone wants a woman because they're attractive, not because they're intelligent, and there'll be an exchange factor. But saying that promiscuous women are usually intelligent because getting the money out of the person requires the intelligence. But any service that you render onto a person that's valuable to them, that they're willing to give you something in exchange, is that representation of good karma. So you don't have to be a genius. You could you could be low intelligence and still find services that are valuable to people enough to make a product. But like at all levels, like you could have a restaurant, and I don't know if you wanted to like give IQ estimates for various services, but then larger wealth is usually from expanding in I'm forgetting the technical term, but the replication and expansion of the business. So you don't necessarily have to. I mean, even something like being a cook, having a restaurant, presumably higher IQ will help you be a better cook. But then, if you're have a really good at making some dish, to expand that into a business, you being more intelligent would likely make you more successful. But you don't need high levels of intelligence to find some sort of service that's useful to other people that they're willing to pay you for.
Well, let me narrow down the question, because I don't think that's quite what I intended for you to answer. Are there sources of wealth that are non-monetary, okay, that can't be measured monetarily, that are evidence of a person having good karma? And could those potentially correlate with good karma even more than money?
Well, I mean, generally birth. I mean, saying that if you believe in reincarnation or some sort of factor that causes the soul, that good karma is what causes a person to take higher birth. So inherited money is the quintessential example of good karma, that that because I had good karma in a previous life, I took high birth and therefore have inherited wealth or something like that. But it could also be being hooked up, having friends that or good things happening to you. Conceivably, if you're metaphysical, like winning the lottery or something, some form of providence, being in the right place at the right time, there's definitely a certain luck providence factor to wealth. But I mean, the quintessential answer to your question is taking high birth and inherited wealth. And then you'd have to question, does it mean the person had good karma because they took high birth? What is it that allowed a person's soul to enter, the body of millionaire parents or something like that? And, if you take a Vedic or some sort of concept, it was because of good karma in a previous lifetime that they took high birth in this lifetime.
Yeah, so by that logic, a pirate who steals a bunch of money and then has a kid, the kid has really good karma.
Well, any form of inherited wealth that it would be from good karma. So, I mean, if you're saying that like a criminal or the bad karma, but but whatever the essence is, that the person didn't have to work for the wealth, that it was just good karma. But I mean, if the reincarnation, taking high birth, is right time or circumstance that could conceivably just be good karma that led to, or just like, let's say, being nice. You could be dumb and but try to be really nice to people, and because you were nice to people, they hook you up in, like, okay, like I have a 5-bedroom house, and largely to myself, and because someone's nice to me, like I let them stay for me by free. Or like I have an extra car that I'm not using, and because someone's nice to me, like you could use my extra car. So it's like the good karma that because you were nice to somebody or did good things, that you get so to say hooked up, would be example of non-intelligent good karma that resulted in material wealth.
So let me get this straight, because I'm confused. What's of a higher karmatic value? A loyal friend, a dedicated master teacher, or a lot of money in the bank? Which one of those three is of the highest karmatic value?
Well, I'm not sure they're necessarily, I'm saying they're exchangeable. They're not, if you say money as like a module of transfer, that karma is in essence a metaphysical vehicle of transfer of value in the same way of money. So money is a physical thing, or even say it's esoteric, but money is, you have a bank account and there's a number in it, or you have possessions that have a certain value. But good karma means that you did good action, and that good action could be exchanged like reward, like like the principle of Maimonides: the righteous get rewarded and the wicked get punished. So if you do good deeds, there's a esoteric metaphysical storehouse of good karma that you've created by doing those good deeds, that could be transferred to something else. So if you were really nice to a bunch of people, and let's say, like, in some system you've built out a storehouse of good karma, and that good karma could be transferred, could be cashed in. That they say, okay, like Gandalf, he was really nice to me, and then then he calls me up and asks me if he could borrow $1,000, and so that, like, now we're even. Like, okay, like, you were nice to me and you helped me out those times, and like I always felt like I owed you, and then you asked me for $1,000, and then, like, okay, here's $1,000, we're even. So that was like a transfer, that good karma that you built up being transferred into money.
Can any amount of, or any type of good karma be transferred into something that is monetary or money denominated?
In like a Kabbalistic or Vedic system, presumably there's a conservation principle that, yes, all karma is cashed out, so to say. That how exactly these mechanisms work, we're talking about something metaphysical. So I could give an example, like you being nice to somebody and then asking for a favor or something. Like, you said, like, someone let you stay in their house, maybe you were in class with somebody and you were smart, and you let them do your homework, you help them out, and then it turns out that they're rich and had a big house and they let you stay there or something. So, like, that's a conservation of karma type principle, where you did good for somebody and they return that good. Or conceivably, metaphysically, where it's not where you did good for someone else and then it was done like through God, where you were repaid through a different venue, not through some material way that makes sense, but through some way that makes sense. Like, you were good, you helped people out, and then therefore when you were in need, other people helped you out, although it may not have been direct in the way that because you helped this person out and then cashed in a favor with them. It was metaphysical in a way that you just had a storehouse in the spiritual realm that was conserved, and then therefore these good things had to happen to you in return.
How is not this the basis for an ethics that is really substantial, any different than the kind of style of ethics that, say, a prostitute uses in meeting sexual customers?
Well, it's like just a module of transfer. So it's similar. So it's like, if there's a man who desires sexual relations, and you're saying that the man gets basically the majority of the benefit out of sexual relations, and the woman, is at the losing end of it. So you have a monetary transfer that prostitution usually works, and the man paying the woman for sex, as opposed to, let's say, a relationship where the woman isn't necessarily a prostitute, but has sexual relations with the man, and then at a later point ask the man for material favors. Can I live in your house for free? Could I borrow your car? Could I, so on and so on. That's not necessarily like a prostitution type favor, but it just makes sense in the material realm that, like, okay, this is my girlfriend and we're having relations. So, like, of course I always buy dinner. Of course, like, I give her money when she needs. Of course I let her borrow my car, so on and so on. That, doesn't have to be, karma, like the money as karma, because money is something tangible in an exchange. So karma is something metaphysical that's not actually in the material realm. There has to be a measurement. And if you want to quantify it for a number, like I did so much good and I've acquired, X amount of good karma, and that X amount of exchange through conservation principles will be, given back to me.
Well, to use the comparison, because I think there's a deeper meaning here behind what I'm going to make sure I try and convey it better in my line of thought here. But I think there's this the ethic of the prostitute meeting the customer is actually, according to your theory of karma, as I understand it, far more karmatically good than if a man who's the customer and the woman who would be the prostitute in a transactional relationship actually developed a real sort of relationship based on duty and care. Because duty and care cannot be monetized so easily, but that's what's necessary for basically human love and affection to come together to reproduce.
But I mean, it's similar that the man gives resources, when God forbid, like just a prostitute where it's an exchange of sex for money as opposed to a relationship. But the natural structure of a relationship is, the man providing material needs for the woman.
But why does he do that? Does he do that in exchange for just pleasure? Because I want this and you have this, and my money will allow you to then go and exchange it yourself in the similar way towards something else?
Well, it's like karmatically, I'm saying it's a conservation principle. So if it's just like in exchange of material pleasure for money, where obviously the prostitute is not going to have, your child, and it's just going to be a moment of pleasure and some sort of fair market transaction, like, I was mentioning, God forbid, like in New York, like Hunts Point or something, where a person, might have sex on a street corner, literally, for like $20 versus, picking up the Village Voice and, more clean cut prostitute that might charge $150 or whatever the going rates are, God forbid, in exchange for just pure sexual service, is in essence a karmatic conservation principle, that the woman gave something and then the exchange is money, as opposed to, so to say, a legitimate relationship that, sanctioned and moral, is still has the karmatic conservation principle that you want your woman to be trustworthy, faithful, and bear your children and do a good job raising your children. And the conservation of karmatic principles is, in return, you provide safety and material stability to your wife. But the conservation karmatic principles, this is similar.
But if I wanted to be sure of having good karma, as under your system, wouldn't the morally preferable path to take in a relationship is to have merely transactional sexual relationships, a la Prostitute and John, versus having relationships that are based on love that is not based on exchange value?
Well, the conservation of karma is the same in either case. That either way, you're going to have a conservation of karma, because generally that sexual relationship between a man and a woman is more the woman doing a favor to the man than a man doing a favor to the woman. That's why most prostitutes are women, and the man pays the women. And in a legitimate relationship of love in a family, there's also the conservation principle, because the woman does so to say the service to the man by being faithful and bearing the man's child and raising the man's child. And the conservation principle isn't like paying for a prostitute, but the karma is conserved by you providing for the woman in terms of material needs and safety. So I'm just saying that's just the conservation of karma, and you could look at it in terms of money, but like the karma is transferable. So so to say, cashing in the karma for money. So if you have a girlfriend that you have sexual relationship with, you could say kind of like you owe her, and it doesn't mean she's a prostitute. Like if you buy her jewelry and let her live in your apartment and take her out to eat and these various things, it doesn't make it into a prostitutional relationship. It just means that there's a conservation of karma.
But there's less money exchanged, and money is the best correlate of good karma. So if you have a good karmatic sexual relationship, from your model, I'm positing, would
I
have.
don't necessarily say that money is the best correlate of karma. I'm saying that there's a fact, according to not just my system, I'm saying this like a Judeo-Christian, even Vedic system, is that it's factual. When you do good deeds, you create good karma, and then that good karma could be exchanged, so to say, for things that benefit you in a conservation. Like what goes around comes around. So when you do good, you have good coming to you. When you do bad, you have bad coming to you. So if you do good, money is like this neutral thing that you could exchange for basically whatever you want. So in the metaphysical realm, when you do good, you create a storehouse of this metaphysical concept called good karma, and then that good karma has to be conserved so that you will get, in reaction to the good that you did, the good will come to you.
So what's the evidence for the law of conservation of karma?
Well, I debate that guy Ben Watkins. You say that if you're atheist, you say that there is no such thing as karma, that what comes around goes around is factually not true. As Ben Watkins, the PhD student, I think in philosophy, who is defending some form of materialism, you put it that the universe is ambivalent to ethics or justice. That like no, that karma is a religious metaphysical system, and that what I said for a dualistic view, that karma happens on the spiritual realm. So if I'm nice to a poor person, that there's an event in the material realm. Like if I go out to the store and there's a poor man outside of the store asking for money and give $1, that there was a material event of me doing that. But that whether the poor man or anything, that Ben Watkins said the universe is indifferent to that. But karmatically, saying there's a metaphysical event that happened in the spiritual realm, that when I gave the poor man $1, that besides the physical event of giving $1, that there was a metaphysical event in the spiritual realm that recorded that I did something good, and due to the conservation principles that I have due to me coming that good. So if you're nice to somebody, besides for the person, they're like, oh, Gandalf was nice to me. So in a purely material system, the guy could just, I don't care that Gandalf was nice to me, I'm still going to be mean to him. Or the person forgot that you were nice to him and never told anybody, or just didn't care. First thing, no, there's a spiritual realm, and in the spiritual realm, it was recorded in a karmatic tally that you did this good, and that storehouse has that you did this good, and that good will be repaid to you. That's the science of karma. And from Jennifer might have a different understanding, but from me, it's a completely dualistic system, that anytime you've done something good or bad, it's something in the spiritual non-material realm. There's some sort of tally of that, and by the time you die, that tally is going to be returned to zero. You're going to be or maybe in your next life, but that tally will be returned to zero, and the good that you do will be paid back to you, and the bad that you do will also be paid back to you. and that's what we're calling karma. And from the Judaic Kabbalistic system, money is designed to represent this spiritual reality of karma. So if you're not a believer, you're not a dualist, you say karma factually does not exist. If you were nice to some random person, there's no reason to assume that there's anything good coming to you. That's just as possible that you could see some homeless person and give them, help them out, hook them up, and then get beat up and murdered and tortured to death and killed, God forbid. Not like you give $5 to somebody and then you're going to get $5 given to you. It so that is a spiritual belief that as an atheist or materialist you would say factually is false and doesn't exist.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that you've proven that the way this kind of, let's just call it depositive spiritual karma, manifests in the material world in that way. And I don't know if that's testable by any sort of empirical or scientific or even pseudoscientific method.
Well, I've showed, historically that the Judeo-Kabbalist had, namely the Arizal, but even previous to him, had a system of, so to say, karma, action, reaction, and of a complete explanation for how the reward of the righteous and the punishment of the wicked occurs, and that is within a dualistic system, that in the spiritual realm, there's a separate reckoning of the good and bad that people do, and that the financial markets were actually developed by students of the Arizal, like the Dutch East India Company, the futures market, the joint stock company, were the credit system in general were factually developed by Kabbalists. And I've shown some of the research on my channel, but this is a factual statement that I could show you that the people, the founders of the Dutch East India Company, were in fact students of the Arizal's Kabbalah and based their ideas on how to found these equity markets on this spiritual Judeo understanding of how action and reaction works. So that you say that we operate in a material realm where there's markets and a credit system. What's the origin of those markets and credit system? And if you look into the history, it is factually Kabbalah.
Is it well possible, I should say, that how do I phrase this exactly correctly?
You say it's not true, but if you reject that that the visionaries and the architects of the markets in the West were students of the Kabbalah and created the markets and the credit insurance system based on a Kabbalistic understanding, I think that's a matter of history, and even your own historical research would probably verify it. So just in the basic of the credit system, where you have a credit card and it's based on on how you've worked in the past, how much money you've gotten, how quickly you pay your bills on time, that that system was created at some point, and the people who created that were in fact students of Kabbalah, and that was what they were thinking when they did, even though it was largely mathematical. But saying that this system of credit, like what's your credit score, and your credit score is based on the history of your financial transactions, and that there's like a ledger, a double ledger accounting, where there's a ledger of your good deeds and a ledger of your bad deeds, that in essence is a material manifestation of an esoteric understanding that Jews had of how karma, your reward and punishment, works.
Okay, is it possible that the fact that, say, the founders of the Dutch East India Company were students of Kabbalah, could it be also that Kabbalistic practices are themselves developed as sort of a
it's possible. To go too down that,
or other financial shenanigans? That's another way to interpret that.
Well, I'm saying that's what they believed. So the people who were instrumental in the architects of the insurance and the credit and the equity markets believed in Kabbalah, even in some of their own writings, discuss how they created these systems to manifest their understanding of Kabbalah is a matter of historical so to say factor interpretation. You could look into it on your own, and I've shown some of the research, and saying that if you're saying they're wrong, Kabbalah was false. There is no esoteric spiritual God in the sky that has a ledger of the good deeds that we do and the bad deeds that we do, and some sort of credit system of how much good is going to happen to us and bad is going to happen to us, determined by the storehouse of good deeds and bad deeds that we've done. That is pretty obviously, you could look into it. That was the Judeo understanding of how God works in reward and punishment, and the people who were instrumental in the creation of the current economic system largely held of that system. So if your historical interpretation, you agree with me that factually that is what those people believed, and they did try to create the current credit markets and economic systems based on that belief, even though it was false. And so that we could be somewhat so I'm saying not only it's historically true, but they were right in that there is a God in a spiritual system, with like a God in the sky who has a ledger of the good deeds that we do and the bad deeds that we do, and what happens to us is based on that ledger of the good that we've done, the bad that we've done. That you could at least agree that that's what the people who created these economic systems believed, and tried to create the economic systems to represent how they believe that God functions.
Why can I trust that Kabbalists have an accurate?
Where's this going
authoritative
exactly?
view?
This is really, maybe it's time to change subjects here. Where's this going, really?
Well, I was trying to get that there needs to be an understanding of, this is a helpful clarification. If we can have maybe a non-materialistic theory of karma that can take into account the vagaries of human relations that have nothing to do with the monetary realm.
Yeah, it means intention. So your karma is your intention. And then that's the base of it. And your actions are derivative of it. And then they can come back and affect things more. Because your actions can affect people a lot or a little bit, depending on what they are. That's about it. It just comes down to how much suffering you can remove, I guess. Most people can't even remove their own suffering. So most people's karmic imprint is very limited. And money is a type of action potential. And karma you could think of as the supreme action potential. So money maybe is better to imagine that it amplifies whatever your karma already is, without necessarily identifying it as higher or lower. Although there is some truth to the idea of wealth being connected with karma.
Well, if you just look at, as I said, the insurance market, the credit system, and the joint stock company ownerships, like it's that, if me and you open up a business together and create a joint stock company to represent that me and you have created something, and then that there's going to be a percentage share of the income, based on that joint stock, or like your credit score, where you have the ability to borrow money based on your previous transactions of how well you have done when you borrowed money and paid it back in the past. That there's some sort of credit bureau that keeps track of it and gives you a credit score, or whether you get a check at the end of the month that, okay, what have you created? What company do you have joint stock ownership in? And that's a material representation of the good karma. So okay, like I have a bookstore, and there's a business of me and my father, and that comes from previous karma, and from that previous good karma, there's a company that has ownership of me and my father, and then there's a check, there's money that comes from it, and then there's a profit share. And so your financial success, meaning like what's your credit score, how many shares of how many companies do you have? In essence, that's, I'm asking, like, what's your karma? And so like that's a translationable to materialistic perspective, what have you done for the world? And you say, well, I have good credit. I've taken these loans and I paid them back in this amount of time, and I provided these services or created these companies with these people and have these arrangements.
It's just a bizarre approach to the subject. I agree with Church of Entropy.
It's a proxy. Money is a proxy. Looks are a proxy. Stature is a proxy. Posture is a proxy. Tone of voice is a proxy. But they have a certain amount of information that they give, not the whole picture. So it's a question of which is the best proxy. So Doooovid says his first proxy is money. Okay, that's his opinion. I don't go by that, but if that's what he's comfortable with,
I didn't say that. I said that's the highest. I'm saying it's factually the correlate to IQ. Whether being a good person or not, the correlate. But saying that. I mean, I said the separate. If you say there's in Hebrew, it's called skarv oynish, reward and punishment. They don't use the term. The Hebrew sages don't use the term karma. They use the term reward and punishment because it's a principle that good actions get rewarded and bad deeds get punished. And it's a conservation principle. It's a fact that is inescapable, whether you want it or not. Anything that you do good will be rewarded. Anything that you do bad will be punished. And so if you're a believer, that's just a spiritual fact. If you're not a believer, you get, like the question of evil, you say that's absolutely not true. There's no mechanism in the material realm that's going to see to it that when you do good, you're rewarded, or when you do bad, you're punished. The universe is indifferent to morals. So karma, reward, and punishment is a spiritual system of believers. And so even if you're an atheist, you could say the credit system was developed to mirror the system of believers. And so you could say you could be opposed to the current credit system or the current markets. And when you say this people own certain amounts of companies and get checks, or when you want to get money or borrow money, that they're going to look at your credit report. That's the factual world that we live in, that you do have factually a credit score, and you do factually have a bank account that has a certain amount of money in it, and you do factually either own a company or not own a company, and have these so to say material markers of the reward and punishment for what you've done in the world.
Hello? Does that clear it up, Gandalf?
I think so. I mean, I guess I look at karma in a much more nuanced way, and I'm not. I agree that things like credit.
Well, you're not atheist or materials. You're not rejecting.
No,
if you're not going to say karma, like T-Jump, you say karma is a fantasy. It doesn't exist. God forbid if someone goes out and kills somebody and there's no witnesses and no evidence that the person got away with it. Like if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, it didn't make a noise. If a person does a good deed or a bad deed and no one observes it, it has no consequence. And so that's the essence of karma. Say like, no, there is a consequence that if you do an action, even if there's no material mechanism, no one observed it, there's no one to ensure that you're going to be rewarded or punishment for your good or bad deeds, that there is factually some sort of spiritual mechanism, even if it's you don't think it's the God of the Bible that's doing it, but you do believe that there's some mechanism where good gets rewarded and wicked gets punished. Or you're in the school that said like, no, that's just a religious fantasy, and factually that God forbid you could kill somebody, and if there's no evidence you're going to get away with it, and you could go on to have a great life and all these various things, and you could beat up homeless people and then pretend like you actually gave them money, or these various things. Like just the essence of karma is not true. And as an atheist, one of the arguments I use against atheism, that if you're to say that the atheist is going to say karma is factually false, it's a fantasy of religious people, or if you're going to try to give some sort of material mechanism for how karma might manifest itself.
I mean, if you want to make an argument that's like stepping on a grenade that just blows your position to smithereens, you make an argument that cause and effect is just totally an illusion. Why, going back to that debate?
Well, I mean, good or bad, that if you steal something and no one sees it, and so to say, you got away with it, is at the end, Gandict, finished, finito, it happened, it's done. There's going to be no further consequence from that action, or is there some sort of metaphysical storehouse of that information? Or like if you were nice to somebody, that you were just wandering in the park and there's someone that you've never seen before, never going to see in the future, and you just decide to be nice to them, and there's no conceivable way that person is going to ever come into contact with anybody ever that you're going to know to repay you. Is it finito, or is there some sort of realm where this information is kept and conserved?
Well, okay, let's use this. Let's use this kind of almost real world example. Say I'm one of these cities where they've decriminalized shoplifting, and I become one of those street people that just, I don't know, takes one particular item from the same drugstore all the time, and I keep getting away with it because they're not enforcing any shoplifting laws.
I was even going to the further extreme of a mechanism where there's no possibility that anybody other than you knows that the action even occurred.
Well,
if you want to use that example, but that's why I was using, the example of, let's say you're in the park and, you give $10 and feed a guy, and then he dies in good that comes to you in return, unless there's some sort of non-material mechanisms, like, no, you help that person. And even though in the material realm, there was no one who knows that you helped that person, and there's no way that in the material realm that anybody would ever help you out in return for you having helped that person, as opposed to an example like, shoplifting the store where there might be witnesses. But if you want to go with that, that's why I was giving that kind of, tree falls in the forest and no one hears it example.
Well, the reason I'm going with, because we want to talk about moral character, and going back to Jen's point on intention, I want to see if I've completed the circle here. Let's say I just become, the shoplifter in a city which, decriminalizes shoplifting, like San Francisco or something, and I'm taking the same thing,
God forbid,
the store.
God forbid,
right? Well, the fact that I repeatedly do it, get away with it, and then eventually become almost dependent upon it because I'm living in San Francisco after all, that changes your character. I mean, the fact that you might get something so, maybe good that you need in the short run by stealing or shoplifting, and the fact that you keep getting away with it, and that it then becomes a habit that forms, well, that becomes part of your karma too. I mean, if your intentions can be molded by the force of the habits that you develop by taking repeated courses of action. And I think your model doesn't allow for karma.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm giving the tree falls in the forest, no one hears it type. You're giving a material mechanism. So, I mean, you're rejecting one thing. You're assuming that what you're saying is true. That, like, let's say there is a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde phenomenon where they're saying, like, no, even though Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are factually the same person, that it's possible that no one is ever going to discover that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are the same person, and that Dr. Jekyll will be able to function as Dr. Jekyll, even though he is in fact Mr. Hyde. And so you're saying, like, no, the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde phenomenon can't exist, and eventually the fact that Dr. Jekyll is Mr. Hyde will prevent him from being Dr. Jekyll.
Church of Entropy, did you understand my previous question? That I was trying to, my intention was to try and develop a fuller understanding of how
She's supposed to be right back in the chat. If she may not be there for a second. I mean, that's why if you're saying that the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, you're saying that that there is some sort of mechanism that you can't, cheat and get away with it. So to say that there's a material mechanism that you can't sin and get away with it, and that you're going to try to explain through a material mechanism of character, that if you sin, that it's going to have some sort of effect on your character that has some sort of outcome, and you're rejecting the phenomenon that even say like, the guy's a pretty good guy, but like you feel, okay, I'm just going to steal, no one saw, I got away with it, and you're saying like, no, that's going to affect your character. And that, so for the sake of argument, say no, like you're like, no, maybe the guy steals and he's still a nice guy, like, say he doesn't beat his wife, he doesn't that he just steals and it didn't affect other aspects of his character. And you're saying like, no, by definition, that because stealing has some sort of negative stain on, if the person doesn't even have a soul, on the material creation of the person, that will create karma, that bad things will happen to him. And even to say like, do good things happen to bad people? Is it possible that a person could rape, murder, and steal and get away with it and trick people, the Machiavelli, and people think he's a good person, but really, he's raping, murder, and stealing and just fooling people that he's a good person, and we're all just going to die and go to sleep forever, and it doesn't make a difference, and that there are factually people that are bad people and got away with it their whole life, and we don't even know. So you're saying that, is that phenomenon, according to your system, does the phenomenon exist or not?
Okay, I think the phenomenon exists. I think the point is,
according to the karmatic system, it's like, no, it can't exist because there's some sort of spiritual accounting that ensures that the righteous get rewarded and the wicked get punished, even through reincarnation or something. But if you're not a spiritualist and there is no separate realm that keeps an accounting of the good and bad, there might be certain mechanisms, but you're saying if you have that outlook on the world, that there is no karma, and that yes, you can cheat and get away with it, or you're going to give a material conception that you're so you can't cheat and get away with it, even though there is no God, even though there is no separate spiritual realm that records good and bad. So I mean, as we're saying, do you think that people could cheat and get away with it or not? And then if you don't think, and if you're not a spiritualist and don't think that people could cheat and get away with it, do you actually have some sort of mechanism that justifies that? I mean, did you want to go forward with this line of reasoning? I'm saying this is one of my arguments against atheism, and as a believer, and then if you have some sort of systematic understanding of saying like, no, you can't cheat and get away with it, and there is some sort of karmatic system, be material or spiritual, that money is representative of that system. Like, no, you can't cheat and get away with it. You have to work. You have to do something for society in order, it's basically the barter system, that if you have wealth, it's because you have given other people, something of that value, that there is no way to acquire wealth without having given other people something of that value. And you're saying that, or you're saying that no, I mean, people with wealth just cheating got away with it, besides for the phenomenon of, so to say, taking high birth, or if you're going to say luck or circumstance, but say that money is built upon the phenomenon that you can't cheat and get away with it, and money is purely representative of barter, and whatever you have in your account is exactly proportional to what you have provided to other people.
Hello? I don't know if Gandalf is gone. Or...
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to talk, and then I realized I'd muted myself by accident. I just wanted to ask. I appreciate this line of thinking on karma, and I realized I gotta think about how karma manifests and being more scientific about it quite a bit more. And so I really appreciate the learning opportunity there. I just wanted to ask, because of all the atheist debates going on now of the type that you've run into, Church of Entropy, is this a sign that, to use an analogy, when a star gets really hot, right? Toward the end, like Betelgeuse probably is a star that's probably in this phase. And it keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. It gets to its biggest point that perhaps it's like this renewed or say return to the atheist debates that were big 15 years ago under the likes of Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens and Daniel Dennett and whatnot, that the return to this is a sign that we're in for an explosion in beliefs that are pantheistic. Or I should say that the atheists, they're kind of like that overgrown, overblown star that's kind of about ready to die, that's ingested too much energy, and they're desperately trying to hold on to their position. Because everywhere I go, people are sounding more and more pantheistic.
Is that a question or? Sorry, I kind of if that's a question, I missed it.
I think I tried to word the question, and I think it's my brain, which is tired because I've worked 12 hours each of the last 2 days. So my brain is at its kind of limit. So I might just sign off because I'm losing track of my own thoughts and I need to get to bed. But I at least wanted to say hello, and I'll think of something more intelligent to say later. So I apologize if I lost track of my thoughts.
Thanks for joining for the.
Yeah, we're still every week.
See you again.
We haven't stopped our regular weekly week in review. You're welcome anytime, and if you are in a situation to stream more, we're still popping into streams. You had Right Reaction and various new people and networks like JJ was on earlier. That if you do get back into it, you're always welcome.
I appreciate everything you do here on this show, and I wish you all the best. Have a good night.
See you later, Gandalf.
Latin for place, position, like location. That loci is the derivative of the etymology of our current word for location or places, as it says here. And yeah, I've been mentioning, Jennifer, chunking theory, and I said that basically all mental memory techniques are based on chunking because of the hard limit of 7 items in working short-term memory, that you could only operate with 7 plus or minus 2 items in short-term memory. And so in order to accomplish larger mental feats, you have to chunk together larger items, that you only have a hard limit of 7 items, but you could have large chunks as those 7 items. So I thought it'd be interesting to go over various mental techniques and the multiple truth hypothesis in a certain way that hopefully people come to understand could also be understood as a chunking memory technique. So from what I understand, the method of loci is the most famous ancient memory technique. Cicero writes about the method of loci. I think there was a story in ancient Greece where there was some sort of collapse at a banquet, a large banquet, and the hall collapsed, and God forbid, almost everyone died. And they were trying to figure out who was there. And one of the orators was able in his head to remember going around to various tables and piece together mentally the names of the people. And then orators in ancient Greeks also mentioned this method of memory, and it's in essence a chunking technique where there's different ways of doing it, but something that is previously chunked in your head. I mean, it would basically today be a form of template theory, that you have a large template of something that you know very well in your head already, that is basically one item in working memory, like your house, the directions to work, some piece of information, like if I were going outside of my house to work, and the various turns I would take, or my morning routine of when I wake up and what I do in the morning, and that you attach memory to that. And it's called the method of loci. and it's probably the single most famous memory technique. It's still used today. You see on the Wikipedia, even current memory champions currently use it, and a lot of other memory techniques are based on this method of loci. I'm not sure if Jennifer, you actually want to read from the Wikipedia page a little, or if you have some sort of understanding of this.
I'll read the quote. The method of loci, an imaginal technique known to the ancient Greeks and Romans and described by Yeats, 1966, in the book Art of Memory, and Luria, 1969. In this technique, the subject memorizes the layout of some building or the arrangement of shops on a street or any geographical entity which is composed of a number of discrete loci. When desiring to remember a set of items, the subject walks through these loci in their imagination and commits an item to each one by forming an image between the item and any feature of that locus. Retrieval of items is achieved by walking through the loci, allowing the latter to activate the desired items. The efficacy of this technique has been well established, as is the minimal interference seen with its use. Not sure what that last bit means, to be honest. Hello? I can't hear Doooovid.
I didn't say anything. So,
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of like the journey method. And just read here, the technique is taught in a metacognitive technique, and learning to learn courses is generally applied to encoding the key ideas of a subject. Two approaches are link the key ideas of a subject and then deep learn those key ideas in relation to each other, and then think through the key ideas of a subject in depth, rearrange the ideas in relation to an argument, then link the ideas to loci in a good order. I've taken courses from like the great courses, and if you're looking for an example, let's say something that extremely well, like usually the location of a building, like the location of your house. So if you have 10 rooms in your house and you're thinking about going room to room in your house, like if you're starting in one corner and going room to room, and then you place the memory in each room, and so I mean, it's kind of late, but you could see online examples. But like if you wanted to give if you wanted to give a person a list of 20 random pieces of information, usually tests would show that you can't do more than 7. 7 is the hard limit. So if you just give a person 7 random pieces of information, that's the limit. So if you give them 10 random pieces of information, they're not going to be able to remember. So if you give a person a list of more than 7 items, the method of loci is one method of remembering it, and then you would use some sort of visualization technique to create a connection between what you're trying to remember. So let's say my journey to work involves 10 locations, so you would create some sort of narrative structure. So if there's like a random list, like banana, cat, Howard, Jeffrey, 7, red, green, Stephanie, or just random piece of information that there's no narrative between, that the method of loci creates a coherent narrative. So you would have something of the structure, like, okay, like I wake up in the morning and I get out of my bed and I go to the bathroom, and then I brush my teeth, and then I go downstairs, and then I get a coffee, and so on and so on, and that I would create some sort of visualization. So if it was the random list, I get out of bed, and then I would connect that to some piece of information, and Howard's there, like randomly I get out of bed and Howard's there, and I go to brush my teeth, and there's something green in my teeth, and then when I go downstairs to get my coffee, but but this structure of something that's very easy to remember, like a 10, 20 part structure that is in my head and it's previously chunked, and then a visualization method to connect that to the pieces of information allows the person to remember multiple items through combination of really it's a template theory and then some sort of visualization narrative method that stores the new pieces of information within an existent template. So this is an ancient method that the Greeks write about when they were orators, and that when they spoke in front of large crowds and had to memorize names or information, that they had templates, and it was called the method of loci because the method of loci was usually the templates were structures that the people would relate, like walking around a palace, and they have the palace memorized, and then they would visualize that journey through the palace, and each point that they're memorizing would be connected to a known point in this known journey. So this is basically the method of loci. It's known to work. Said that people in memory championships use it. People for if you're going to like an event on public speaking, oratory, like a Dale Carnegie, like how to win friends and influence people, they might teach you this technique because you need to know, like how to memorize names or something like that. So it's just, in essence, this is the single most famous memory technique. I encourage people to look into it more. And it's also one of the most ancient, well-established technique that's been around for a long period of time. If you want to show this one, I'll put it in the chat. This one is a more straightforward mnemonic system, and it's called the major system. And if you want to put that one up on screen share, this one is a much more simpler, intuitive form of chunking, and it's also known by memory champs for numbers, and it's basically a system of each number from 0 to 9 being given a sound, and so like 0 is like S, C, X, or Z. 1 is
that's just
E, 2 is N, 3 is M, 4 is R, 5 is L, 6 could be like C, H, J, G, 7 K, C, Q, G, 8 F, P, H, G, H, 9 P or B, and so it doesn't even use the whole alphabet. And then so if you're trying to memorize a number, you would have to create this template in your head where you just had a hard memorization where you had completely connected in your head these numbers with these sounds. And then if you had like a long number, let's say a 20-digit number, you could transcribe that because there's multiple different sounds that you could choose. You could transcribe that into words. And so people have memorized like pi for hundreds or thousands of digits, have been known to use the system or even create like sentences in poetry. And if you're very skilled with the system, you could do it even for like doing long digit multiplication in your head or something like that, where you memorize long digit chains by creating it, putting it into a word. So as it's like a chunk, you can only operate with 7 items of working memory in your head. And so if you could take like a 4 or 5 digit number and remember that as a word, and then you could take various words and put those in a chain of something meaningful, you could memorize lots of numbers. And so people who are into these memory techniques have usually done this for everything between 0 and 99. And so
just to be sure that you want me to put up the wiki for Mnemonic, right?
No, the thing I put in the chat, the mnemonic major system.
Okay, sorry.
I mean, it is a form of mnemonic, but I'm referring specifically to the major system. And I mean,
I just
mnemonic
can't get the link directly from the chat. I've got it up now, though.
yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, if you want to read from it.
Well, each numeral is associated with one or more consonants. The link is to the sound, not the letter. C, as in cat or Cynthia, and cello would each have different values in the system. Vowels, semivowels, and consonants are ignored. These can be used as fillers to make sensible words from the resulting consonant sequences. Okay, so I guess you're making words as a short form for known lists. So this would work really well for memorizing anything that's a list, like pi, for example.
Yeah, so they have competitions, and actually, like, I think people have memorized literally like tens of thousands of digits of pi. So like they actually have competitions for how many numbers you can memorize pi, and it's huge numbers. I'm not sure. Let me check this pi memory record. In 1981, an Indian man, Rajan Mahadevan, recited 31,811 digits of pi from memory. 1989, Japanese 40,000 digits. The current Guinness World Record is held by Lu Chao of China, who in 2005 recited 67,890 digits of pi. So, according to everything we know about memory, you have this hard limit of 7. That there have been tests just giving people digits and how much they could remember. And so this man who memorized, close to 70,000 digits of pi had a mnemonic. And I think they actually used the major system. There might be other mnemonics, but so if you took the major system and you created some sort of narrative story based on the major system for a number, and then you could memorize let's say like a poem or some sort of narrative, maybe even a combination of like the method of loci and the major system, where you use a combination of memory techniques. And so this is a known thing. Chess players, backgammon players, but specifically memory competitions, they have things like this, and it's a known technique that people use, and it works. So if you wanted to master the system, the first thing you need to do is to create a mnemonic and, so to say, like burn it into your brain. That you have, like, if it's the major system that is the most common one, you would burn that into your brain. That just when you think of these numbers, you think of these vowel sounds that go, the letter sounds that correspond to it, so that anytime you could just transfer back and forth, so to say, without any mental effort between number and sound, and then you could memorize things in word form, and then transfer that back into number. So that method that the person have memorized 70, that maybe that means they memorized a mnemonic of some sort of consonantal word structure, and if it was average, let's say 5 letters per word, that means still that they memorized like 12,000 words or something, that they somehow in their head had some sort of 12,000 word prose memorized that they transferred back into numbers. So that's still a phenomenon. But if you want to memorize 50, 100 digits, if you had burned into your brain the major system, even to memorize 100 digits, you would only have to memorize a 20 word phrase.
Pretty amazing, these hacks, aren't they? Definitely interesting stuff.
So I was mentioning it, like these are mental phenomenon that are known, and people, like I said, the masonry versus the magician. So when you're out in public, you could be, a magician who just does these feats and like, how'd you do it? That's amazing. And then try to, like make yourself like a magician. But when you're in the lodge, you're a mason, and it's because you've mastered techniques, and the other masons in the lodge are also familiar with these techniques. And so these are, two of the most common method of loci in the major system that people use. But there's hundreds of systems, and as I mentioned, they're all forms of chunking. That all memory techniques, in essence, are a form of chunking. And the reason why they're all forms of chunking is because of this hard limit of 7. So it's a method of burning things into long-term memory and then using, which in psychology they refer to template theory, that burning into like the template, creating templates in your mind, and the template is a chunk, and then allowing yourself to update that chunk, update that template with new information, and then operate in short-term memory with the template chunk. And the hard problem of consciousness, you're looking at you could be smart, but there's hard limits to what the mind could do. So speed reading is like the main thing. It said I think it's called the cicada. If you want to just Google cicada and put up cicada, okay, so here's, I'll put it also in the chat, the wiki. If cicada is spelled SACCADE, it's a quick simultaneous movement of both eyes between two or more phrases or fixation in the same direction. So for something like speed reading, there's a hard limit of how fast your eye could move, how much information you should be able to speed read. And generally, it's about 600 words. That if you did studies of a person's eye and you looked at a page, that a person should only be able to read about 600 words a minute, and that should be a hard limit, just on the pure physical ability of how fast the eye could move. And if the eye had to move across all the lines of a word, of a page, that you would be limited at a max of about 600 words per minute on the testing of pure physical ability. And there's not people that could really, maybe like 800 or something, but there's really no way to move your eye faster. You can't speed read by you learning to move your eye faster. So speed reading techniques also in chunk, to say like when you speed read, it's because you read down the page, you don't read across the lines, that you have to chunk the whole line, and that if you try moving your eye from left to right across the line, back and forth, then you're going to hit the limit of about 600 words per minute. And that's why speed reading, they usually tell you to move your finger straight down the page, and that means that you have to chunk the whole line. And so if you're training your eye, you have to intake all the words on the line in one look. And so it's a similar chunking technique. And so this is universal. All mental techniques, all memory techniques are a form of chunking.
Oh, cool. I'm still not clear what you mean by chunking now, because you said that the template is the chunk, and I thought the template was the chunker. Your model basically has no chunker, just all chunks.
Well, the template there is hypothetical because it's unclear how exactly these things work. So the chunk and the chunker, what it is. So the template in theory is a chunk and a chunker. So it's unclear how chunking works. We know that all memory and mental techniques are a form of chunking, but we don't actually know how the chunking process works.
So how can you know it's chunking if you don't know how chunking works?
I've done on my channel the studies, but saying that they've tested with numbers, giving people just series of numbers to memorize, and people, you're saying that it, like, Jennifer could be smart, but I mean, if you want, I'll test you right now. I'll just give you a list of numbers and ask you to repeat them back. I don't know if you actually, it's worth the time.
I don't think I would do very well at that, because the things I memorize are integral, and I don't.
I'm saying you would be maxed at about
basis.
7. Yeah, I'm saying, like,
probably. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying this has been well tested and studied. I'm saying like that maybe Jennifer would be able to get like 9 or 10 numbers, but people with training could memorize hundreds of numbers, and it's empirical because you have to solve the hard problem of consciousness to do it, but it's done through chunking. That you say if just like 3, 4, 7, 6, 3, 1. 3, 1, 3, so okay, well, 3, 4, 7 is the area code for cell phones in Brooklyn. 6, 3, 1, I forget if that's area code somewhere in Michigan, and 3, 1, 3 is another area code in Detroit. So here's 9 numbers. So I just said 3, 4, 7, 6, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. That if it was a single information, it would be impossible. So I just said 3, 4, 7, 6, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. That would basically be impossible for a person to repeat back. But if a person was able to chunk it and make some sort of meaning of it, where it was 3, 4, 7, 6, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, then a person could easily repeat the 9 digits back, like I just did, because it was only 3 pieces of information. So, the mechanism that how do I know 3, 4, 7, 6, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3 is that, well, those things exist in my memory and they're meaningful, and therefore when I heard those numbers, I was able to relate it to a meaningful chunk, and then recall it. Is a solution for the hard problem process. Like Jennifer has theories of how the chunker might work, but as I said, that's largely dependent on a solution to the hard problem of consciousness. So chunking theory is completely based on psychometric tests. It's not based. It corresponds with neural correlates of consciousness, but at this point, it's completely based on psychometric testing. But psychometric testing has conclusively showed that it is chunking how memory works.
Hard to really say you're sure that's how it works without a solution to the hard problem, though, in a way. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying.
But the psychometric data, the psychometric tests are conclusive that the memory, the mechanism of, and that it is chunking that allows people to do it, and there's been tests that have demonstrated that it's been chunking, like I said, for like area codes or zip codes, various things, that it is factually chunks of information that are useful, that allow people to memorize larger sequences than capable. But I'm saying it's all psychometric data, and so to so to say table or bypass the hard problem of consciousness and just talk about psychometric results is to some extent the best that we could do.
Or just accept that the mind is completely useless. It's a useless thing to know. 40,000.
You can't go into a room and meet 15 new people and memorize their names just because you know the mind's a photon waveform.
I do have a good name memorization technique.
You want to test it? I'll give you a list of 15 names. And you want to test it right now?
I'd never use my memory that way. So let's just say that I fail.
I'm saying you wouldn't. I'm saying it's been psychometrically proven. And no, I'm confident that there's no chance Jennifer would. Doesn't matter if she solved the hard problem of consciousness. Doesn't matter if her theories are right. That the psychometric data is conclusive, and Jennifer would not be able to exhibit any sort of phenomenon that would go against the psychometric testing, like repeating back 15 random pieces of information.
I probably couldn't do that. That's true.
You factually couldn't. It's
Maybe if I
psychometrically
tried really hard.
There's no such trying. You can't try really hard and do it. The only thing you could do
Yeah,
is
I can.
chunk.
I can take my existing memory technique and deform it into a memory technique that'll work for this application, but it might take me a little bit of time to get it.
Well, if you want
And
to
it's
test
like,
you right
why
now.
the hell would I do that? And it's like, no, I'm talking at least days. It's like, why would I do that? It's like, I'm not gonna, because there's no utility to it.
Well, having good memory is utility.
I have a good memory. I have a very good memory, but I can't memorize useless things, and that's part of the reason why I have a good memory.
Even useful things.
Don't memorize worthless things.
What's your credit card number?
I have no idea.
Tell me your credit card or your bank number. The piece of like your social security number, or these various things. Saying like it wouldn't be useful. Do you have a credit card?
I do, but I don't.
Do you buy things with your credit card?
You
have it memorized?
Your
credit card is 16 digits, right? Your credit card.
I do not have it memorized. I have my social insurance number memorized.
Social security number in America is 9 digits. Credit card numbers are 16 digits.
Mm-hmm.
So social security numbers in America are usually 3, 4. 324.
Cool.
So if you look at your social security card, the number will be 3 digits, then 2 digits, then 4 digits. If you look at your credit card is 16 digits, 4 separate 4-digit numbers. So in just terms of, if I just listed to you, even it gave you a whole second, just like 7, 1, 3, 8, 9, 5, 1, 3, 5, 8. Just randomly, you're going to hit a hard limit at about 7. If in your head you chunk those together, that so like if I go 7, 1, 3, and then your head you're like 713, 713, 713, and try to create a chunk of 713. And therefore, and then in the next digits, try to create another chunk like that. That works. Like, if you want to memorize 2 phone numbers at the same time, and you chunk both the numbers into most numbers, let's say 10 digits, it includes a zip code, area code. So a phone number is 10 digits, but the number is in a chunk of 3, 3, and 4. So if you want to memorize something that's 3, 3, and 4, and another number that's possible that you could together into 3, 3, 4, and 3, 3, 4, that's only 6 pieces of information, and you would be able to memorize that. And you don't necessarily need a chunking technique like you could in your head just do it by repeating it multiple times back and forth to create a chunk. There's like 917, 917, 917. Or if you're like, 917 is the area code of Brooklyn cell phones, just like 347 or New York cell phones that are 917 or 347. And so you could but this is the basis of chunking theory. I've went over some of these on my channel. These things have been tested. Really, they already started coming onto this like 70, 80 years ago in psychometric tests, and they've been replicated in thousands and thousands of tests. And it's I don't even have a question. Like I'm saying, Jennifer, a person with a 200 IQ, doesn't matter. Like you could demonstrate that these psychometric limits of the mind are true, and you could demonstrate that the only way to go beyond these psychometric limits of the mind is through some form of chunking. I don't care. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you deny it or not. I'm saying these things have been conclusively demonstrated in psychological tests. Like I'm not asking for your verification.
Alrighty. Doesn't really help the conversation progress when you talk to me like that. So
Well, I mean, because it's your point. Like,
no.
why would I'm not asking for verification of something that's established.
Well, you do realize that for something to be right, the axioms and the suppositions need to be right.
Depends what you mean by right.
For something to be scientifically replicable, you don't need to get the axioms right. You can have any axioms and still get it right just by sheer chance. So it doesn't guarantee that the interpretation's right just because there was a replicable result, if there indeed was one. But I wanted to answer Tinklethink's question for how savants know things. So you know how musicians can remember a lot of music? It's because they're visualizing it. So savants, like especially, you know, Rain Man type person, he had no ability to be he wasn't autonomous. He had to be taken care of by his dad. Clearly some other part of his mind was severely impeded, which led to all the energy of his mind concentrated in one place that happened to be able to memorize this way. So not just the technique of like a long number, but actually long series of texts, because he'd just like see it in his own mind and just recite it from memory, basically. That's the best I could explain it.
Yeah, it's like I have a pretty good memory for music, and it's largely chunking. I talk about the structure of the hero's journey, like the tune I did at the beginning, Baruch Hu Elokeinu, Shabaranu Likvoidoi. It was a 3-part tune. Aviv Deloni Minatoyim Nasalonu Toyer Samas V'chayoilam. So it's a 3-part tune, and if you have a musical memory, if you're talking about a visualization, like it's a visualizing, like bars and musical notation in your head, it's possible, like if you really understood music theory, that you would be able to and be able to transfer that into musical notation in your head. But so music generally is just going up and down. So whatever it is of taking a note. So Baruch Hu is basically each syllable has a different note. So Baruch Hu is 3 words, Elokeinu 4 syllables, Shebaranu 4 syllables, Lik Voidoi 3 syllables. So Baruch Hu Elokeinu Shebaranu Lik Voido is lost track, but you're talking like 10 to 12. That's 12 syllables, so you have 3 bars. Baruch Hu Elokeinu Shebaranu Lik Voidoi. If it was 4/4 music notation, you have 3 bars of 4 notes. And so is that 12 unique pieces of information, or if it's in a chunk, and the chunk is basically remembered as call like the hero's journey, and the hero is either going up or down. So you're remembering a journey of moving in a path where at each step you're either moving up or down, and you're moving up or down in certain increments. And so generally music is remembered in in staffs, in incremental journeys like that, and so it's also a form of chunking as anything else.
Cool.
And I think these things have been well established and tested in decades, and it's the type thing where it'd be like mean to Jennifer or something, but like no, I'm saying it's been tested, and it doesn't matter like how smart you are or how great you think you are. Like
and what predictions does it make?
You get into the lab, and
what predictions does it make? None. It doesn't predict fuck all. It's not even science, so don't start with that.
Well, no, I'm saying the prediction is that there's a hard limit of 7 plus or minus 2.
That is not a prediction. That is an observation derived from experiments. Mine is the one who predicts that there would be 7 because of the measurement limit in the periodic table.
Well, the prediction, you call it, I would say is that it's factual. It's not even, it's been demonstrated, but
What's been demonstrated? What prediction was made? Tell me how they went from a hypothesis to 7. Just tell me how they did that. They didn't. They observed that from their own experiments. That's not a prediction. That's doing something and seeing what the result is.
Yeah, so I mean, the prediction
big
is that the prediction is that people will accord to observation, and it's been observation. You're saying that it's been observed that people under all circumstances have a hard limit of 7 or 2, plus or minus 2 pieces of information.
Still not a prediction.
So I
though,
predict
but
that
I
there is
actually have
nothing
to
that
go because
Jennifer could do.
I have people
with it.
coming over to my house right now, so I actually have to go. Unless you want to carry the show for like 2 minutes.
We can end now because we've covered anything. If there's no more
Great
guests,
show. Thanks everyone for coming out. Sorry to end it abruptly, but I have people coming over to my house right now.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
See you
Have a
guys
great week
soon.
and be in touch.
Have a great week, and talk to you next weekend, if not sooner. Thanks everyone
That's
for
just
showing up.
I mean, so to say, a worthless opinion of.
It's so important that she can't be told, she won't be told that it's wrong. And
bringing it back to Church of Entropy and her attack dog Gandalf the White.
Why don't you learn to shut up and fuck your goddamn logic?
they control the media, and the media is capable of making the sheeple believe in anything.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, we've had these streams, and I've been doing with Church of Entropy, and she's been bringing on new people, and like we did those streams on like stream etiquette. We walk through like the technology.
I have like very strongly negative opinions of the kind of Brundle clique.
Is she trying to garner herself cult prestige by associating herself with a retard?